RootsOfTheSwampThing.com, your definitive online source for all things Swamp Thing. Holland Files number 2 is out, Garrett. How is it?
Holland File 2 was awesome. A lot of cool images that you haven't got to see in Holland Files number 1, so definitely looking forward to finishing this bad boy.
And that's not the only thing. If you want to learn more about Swamp Thing, Alex, where would you go?
You're going to go to rootsoftheswampthing.com.
Make sure to stay in touch at rootsofswampthing.com on Twitter at DC World Swampy, Facebook.com/rootsoftheswampthing. Welcome to Wednesday Comics.
Brought to you by rootsoftheswampthing.com and Siouxpercon 2018 Return of the Con.
Hey everyone, keep turning those pages.
Welcome to Wednesday Comics. To my right, we have Badass. How are you doing, Alex?
Hello everyone.
Hey,
And
boss.
to my left, we have Jorge. How are you doing, Garrett?
I'm doing good. I feel like poking things today.
I'm so glad that you are, Jorge, because I tell you what, that's when I read this book, that's Garrett.
Classy motherfucker.
And I am, what's the dog's name?
Dante.
Dante. That's a fucking good name.
It is.
That dog, by the way, if you notice, I didn't even notice that. That dog is older in the beginning. Anyway. Today's our book club show. What is it, Garrett? What kind of book club?
Wednesday Comics Wednesday Comics League of Extraordinary Gentle People proudly presents
Daytripper.
by
Gabriel Moon and fuck. Yeah, I'm right.
Yeah. Gabriel Moon and Fabio Ba. I was giving
How many episodes did you
Fabio
say?
Moon and Gabriel Ba.
See, I was wrong.
You were wrong. You tricked me. As you can tell, I'm under the weather, so ignore this voice. This voice is kind of deeper today.
Yeah.
We're going to go deep on this book.
It's about time you hit puberty.
I mean, it was necessary for this book, right? My voice gets deep. We're going to go deep today in this book. It's a very heady book, I would say, emotional. We all conversed before we started the show that we all did share some tears.
Not together. There was no well of tears. It was singular.
No,
tears.
but 3 men did cry
Separate occasions.
over the last couple of courses. But this is a 10-issue miniseries that came out in Vertigo during Karen Berger's days when she was editor of Vertigo. And so they were coming off of Umbrella Academy, which was our first book in this series. They're coming off of other things. They do Casanova also, but I think they're doing, what else were they doing? Is it listed here? No, not really. They went on to win an Eisner for this, a Harvey, as a best story, best one shot. Not one shot, what do you call it?
Limited
series. And so, and that's not the reason why we picked it, though. No. This is a book that, did I read it first and I recommend it to you?
You had read it first, and when I had gotten into books, you go, I'm not comfortable giving you Daytripper.
I read Daytripper a long time ago, and I really enjoyed it. And Alex started reading comics, and I go, and he's like, I think you asked me what my favorite comic is. I go, Daytripper. I go, you can't read it. And I go, I don't even know, I'm not going to borrow it to you. I go, you don't pick up this book. I go, I need you to read other books, get used to this comic thing. And when I feel comfortable for you to possibly hate my favorite book, then you can read it. And Alex read it, and Alex liked this, so that was good for a while.
I was going to say, if you told him to read that flat out first, bad friend.
I said, well, I think part of it was that when I was only reading the superhero books that, everything was a joke, everything is lighthearted, no one dies, there's nothing serious going on.
I think that's what it was. You were just reading Marvel and DC at the time, and then this would have been your first non-Marvel DC book, and I was like, no, that can't be your first. So you started reading Image books, and then eventually I was like, yeah, you should read it now. I think I bought it for you, didn't I?
I think you gave it to me for Christmas one year. Because you're like, now...
As I did. You're right. I did buy it for Christmas. I said, now you're ready to read this.
I was say it was you giving me the permission to read this book.
Kind of pretentious on my side, but still, I don't want you to read my favorite book. And then you had picked it for the book club. This is your choice for this.
Yes.
If you haven't listened to a book club show in the past, we rotate. I picked the first one, and then it was Garrett, and then Alex. I'm picking one at the end of the show. Stick around. It's coming up. Man, my voice sounds really weird. And then...
That's what we've thought the entire time we've done Wednesday Comics.
Alex announced that, hey, this is going to be the book, and that's your first time reading it, right, Garrett?
Yes. I actually bought it 5 years ago during a free comic book day.
Oh, really?
But I just haven't had a chance to open it. And we've talked about this before, like sometimes like with like Royal City and like things like that. When there's a book that's so emotionally heavy, like I almost avoid it because like I don't know, I generally like to be a positive guy, so it's like hard. Like I was hesitant, but like when I finally got to delve in, I'm like, man, I should have been reading this the whole freaking time. Like it's so good.
You know what's something we should do that we haven't done in the past, and I think we should start now is at least for like 5 minutes here. Let's do like a non-spoiler review of just saying what we thought about the book. And that way, if you haven't read this, if you're hearing this for the first time, go, oh, actually, that sounds pretty good. You can go back and read it. And then listen to us to show we'll actually spoil the book and actually talk about it in depth. But I want to throw this question out there just because we're talking about how I hyped it up for Alex and then he read it and enjoyed it. And you heard us talking about it for a long time. I think that's why you bought it.
Yeah, you guys were talking about it. And you know what's funny is, I'll talk about our chat one more time, and then before you open this up, is like, as soon as I finished this book, right away I texted these two, and I said, you bastards, because they did it fucking again. They recommended a book, I read it, and I was like, fuck, that was good.
That's what I'm talking about. Like, so, and like, you bought it because we were talking about it so much, and then I think over the course of 5 years, and multiple times on this podcast, we've said this is like my favorite, and Alex says one of his favorites. We talk about it all the time. About a book that I think a while back we were talking about perspective.
Right.
And, you read something and it changes the way you think about things. So if you, after all that hype, you still liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, I trust in the teaming of Alex and Martin when they recommend a book. But besides that, like,
not individually, just together.
To be fair, I would say the same thing though. You like something, okay. I may not wouldn't believe it.
Right.
Marvin goes, I also agree it's good. Okay, it's worth a try.
Two's better than one.
Depending on what the book is, you're right.
If it's one, it's hearsay until I actually read it.
Yeah.
But I think that, you know, going in with high expectations for how much you like it, you know, usually when you do that, things usually go lower. Mine rose higher than my high expectations going into it. So it's a really powerful story. And I think, yes, kind of like Marvin was saying, you know, with Alex's like bringing on to Daytripper, you definitely need to warm up in comics to begin with. But once you're there, this is a great read. It's very layered. And if you're looking for a realistic book, this is the money.
I think also you have to be ready to, and I think we've hyped it in that way, to read a book that is not going to, I mean, there are happy moments, but it really is an overall, there's depressing stuff.
Yeah, don't label it as depressing. I think
at the end, it's a hopeful book. It's a book about being hopeful instead of being depressing. But, but I think you should, like you said, it's not going to be light at all. It's not light. It's not a light book. So you sit down with this thing. I think no matter where I think this is one of the books I talked about. No matter where you are in your life, you get something different out of it. You read it in a certain way. I even texted you guys after I read it. And I guess this isn't really spoilers. When I first read this, I didn't have a son, and I read it thinking about my dad. And then now that I have a son, I read this thinking about my son as like a father. And so I was like, I found it very powerful in that way that you can read it. I can read it twice and think about the words in a different way. That like, there's we'll talk about it in depth later, but there's a part at the end where the first time I read it, I thought about, you think about like the sacrifices your parents make. And then now I'm reading it and it's more about like where your role is in your son's life, or my son's life. And then you have a daughter now, Garrett. You'll eventually.
I thought he was saying you have a daughter, Garrett. And I was
or I'll get a dog named Don.
But I mean, even if you don't have somebody, what do you call it? A kid. Somebody.
You don't have a child.
If you don't have a child, you can still you can think about like your father.
Yeah, absolutely.
Think about like your future kids. Like think about.
Like, I know that's the thing. It's like even though I don't have a kid, like I can still. They pull you in so much that you can get inside the mindset of the main character's relationship with his father / his father with him, and vice versa onto his son.
Well, so Garrett said even after all the hype, he liked it. Alex, what do you think after reading it so long ago? You read for a second time after all this time, and did it still live up to being like this is still great?
So for the first time I read it, I was still pretty green in the gills, going, okay, I know this book is an important book to Marvin, and it's more of a serious book. I hadn't read Sirius before, and it was great back then. Loved it. And not that I'm a badass by any meaning, but I don't really tear up a lot. Other than like we three, like we made the joke, or Pride of Baghdad. I'm an animal lover. That
I was going to say, but mostly is animals.
But it's generally animal related things that kind of bum me out. So the first time I read it, I really didn't have that emotional spectrum of going, "Wow, this is heartfelt." It is great, but I'm not having any blues. I read it tonight, and I had some tears roll down my cheek at the. I'm just gonna say the last issue really was the strongest for me, and that's hopefully not a spoiler. Just
but
all the build up in the book,
been so right.
All the build up in the book.
Prior.
There were other things that really, really got me choked up, but nothing made me tear up until I even talked to my wife after I got done reading it, and I just couldn't help but stare at my daughter. I was telling Marvin tonight, I almost want tissues in here just in case, because I tell you what, just talking about this book, it is an emotional roller coaster.
You got a gray shirt,
and I'm an ugly crier.
The thing with it also,
without crying.
And actually I want to preface that if you're going to get the book, what Alex said, the last issue is probably the strongest. I think it does build though. Like, don't read this the first issue, or when you read the trade, read the first part of it and be like, that really didn't catch me, because they really something happens in this book over and over again. I kind of spit, okay, I see what's going on here. And then you kind of get what the book's about. Yeah. And I think you really have to read about 3 to 4 of them, maybe even 5, to be like, okay, I see where this is going. And I think it's those moments that you are seeing these issues that when you get to that final issue, or those, actually, I think the last 2 issues are actually it should be like one big issue. But when you get to those, then it's kind of like the exclamation point on the whole thing.
Right.
You're like, oh, this is powerful because of those other issues and what those were. And so we'll talk about that in depth here in a second. But I think me too also. I think it's probably my 3rd time reading it. I think I read it once a long time ago when I first got it. And then when I recommended it to Alex and I gave it to him, I was like, let me make sure this thing's still good. And I reread it, and it was still good then. And then now I read it again for the 3rd time. And like I said, different perspective now. And I thought, I was reading it being like, first off, we haven't talked about it so far. The book is beautiful.
Oh,
colors and art.
So good.
Like Fabio, I think they do have a book coming out pretty soon.
I hope so. I actually maybe want to go back and find
stuff
past books just to read them. Because if all their writing is as beautiful as this, because even the writing is just, it tells a story, and it's called prose, right?
Yeah.
Those prose are so good.
There's some narration and there's some dialogue. I think you know what? A lot of times in writing, and especially comic writing, narration kind of seems pretentious in a way, or seems like that it could be like, this is what you should be thinking, this is what you should be feeling, like they're trying to guide you, which I mean, you really should. But in this book, it really does seem. So the main character is an obituary writer, and it kind of does seem like the narration mainly is his obit, and it really isn't like trying to tell you like, oh, he went to this. It's not really like direction for the scene. It's more like, in this moment, he's like, it's kind of like inner dialogue instead of being narration. And so I think that's why it's great. It's like it kind of gives you more about the scene rather than telling you this is what the scene's about. I think, when we saw their art or saw I think Fabio or Gabriel worked on Umbrella Academy. That was really weird kind of art, and it was a unique style. But if I saw that and I saw this, I wouldn't be like, oh, those are the same people.
Yeah.
Like, this is definitely, like Garrett said, more realistic, and the colors, the watercolors are beautiful. But it definitely is kind of like dreamlike realistic, whereas Umbrella Academy was more like trying to look weird and trying to look kind of strange and alien in a way.
Sci-fi-ish.
Yeah. Where this is kind of like, nobody looks like they wouldn't be a person.
Right.
And there's nothing, they talk about that in the book, like they actually try to make every single place they went to in this book seem lived in, it seemed real. And you really do get that flavor, that
sense.
Yeah, that sense. Because when you see every single place, like they go to his work, they go to like a grocery store, every single place is like, that seems like real. Like there's nothing like, either the detail in each one is not like super detailed where you're like, oh, that's a lot. That must take you forever. But it's realistically detailed. Like you're like, oh, of course, like that's laying there. Yep. That's like, and then it really does when you see it. I think in a good way, make you forget about the background because you're like, oh, that's real. I don't have to look at it to see if it's real. Like, I know it's real. And so a lot of things just seem like you're just watching somebody live life. Yeah.
This is one of those books that the art all around is so good. And it is realistic that sometimes I don't even have to look at the panel. I can see it at the periphery of my eye going, I already understand the panel without having to intently look at it super hard. It's like this book is so smooth while you're reading it. And even the parts that in other books would actually go, well, that's kind of wordy. It adds so much flavor and adds so much storytelling that it's not a complaint to get to read this.
Yeah, there's some panels you could really just look at, and there's so much detail. But you're right. That's the realism that they're trying to create. Like, they even say it post story that, this place doesn't have to be real, but you need to feel that it's real. And if you feel that it's real, then it is real. So I think, man, like, what a great collaboration. Because didn't both do art for it?
Yeah.
Yeah, both did art at different
There's
times.
a little
both did
picture
story.
of them at the beginning of the book, and they're both drawing. So I saw
Right,
both.
yeah.
Even if at the end of the book they talk about this, but you kind of notice it throughout the book. And I think I talked about it, if you go back when we talked about Kill or Be Killed, that like acting, like the people in this book, like you can't really say that, actors act, but they act with their face. And here, these characters are really acting with their faces, and they talk about how they want you to see a picture and be like, I know what that person's feeling right now. I don't need you to tell me in a narration. And there are some pages, I was just looking at, like second to last issue, where a lot of it is silent. But in those panels, you can clearly see what's going on. You can clearly see how people feel. And I don't need narration to be like, oh, they were really sad in this moment, or like this was the worst moment of their life. I know from looking at their faces. And I think there's not many artists that can do that. They can make people act in that way. A lot of artists are great at what they do, but when it comes to faces and like emotions, it's very static. But these two together, I was reading this, and I think that's where a lot of it comes from, because you can see the pain in people's faces. And I don't think you see that much in comics, at least. Like, great actors, you can see when they have pain in their face, and they're not like, who's somebody, I forget. There's an actor that is like so great at crying because you can see the pain in their face, and they don't just like start like bawling. You know what I mean? But I can see like they're like distraught. Well, that's what this is. Like, there's a scene here.
Michael Caine right away.
There's a scene in the second to last issue with a female character, I'll just say for now, for not spoilers, where something happens to the family and she's just in the car and it's all silent. And it's just like her thinking about what just happened, but there's no words for like a page and a half. And you're just looking at it being like, I know what's happening right now. Like, I know what she's thinking. I don't need you to tell me. And they never do. I mean, they never even tell you like why she's just sitting in the car, but because if somebody's ever been in that situation, why she just can't get out of the car and like go on with her life. Let's talk about the book now. But that's been long enough. But so I would recommend it. I know you two would.
Yes.
I'm definitely looking forward to my second read through, because this is definitely something that, like, you guys have noticed by doing your rereads that it can affect you in different points in time in your life. And I think in your even future reads of this book, because I know this is not the last time either of you will read this book, even in the future, going to affect you in different ways. So I'm excited to do a second read through, get different perspectives, because it's like a movie with like a million Easter eggs. I feel like there's so much that I missed, but at the same, like, there's more plot that I could figure out. Like, I think this book is definitely one that you can reread, and I don't think there's any other medium but comic medium that you could do this book. And I don't think movie, TV show, or anything could give it justice, just this comic format.
Two things on what you said. One, let's go. I just want to clarify. It's not only about being father and son, or like having a kid. There's chapters about friendship, chapters about relationships. Family. It's about just life in general.
Right.
I just said that because at the end, that's a part of that affected me. So like you were saying, even like you and your life right now, the friendship parts can mean something to you. The relationship parts can mean something to you. And later on, when you're out throughout your life, like when we also get older, like I want to read this book, maybe the part with his father, that he's an older guy, like that'll affect me more when I'm older. So, and also, in no other medium can do it. I think if you do this in another medium like TV or movies, people will be so concerned about trying to figure out what the supernatural thing is about this book.
The mythology, basically.
That they wouldn't be seeing like, no, that's not what this is about.
Yeah.
And I think it's comics because you can take that your own time with it and kind of look at in the way that the book is drawn, that it kind of takes that, for at least for me, and I think you guys, I would agree, that I really didn't even care about that part. But
no. Well, I think part of it is that this is a book that it's for you to decide how you feel. That if you did a movie, you did a TV show, I don't think a novel could, an actual just word novel, suffice. You need the pictures to show you not necessarily how you need to feel, but how these characters feel. A movie, they would work too hard on guiding you on how you're supposed to feel. With this book,
I think you said it perfectly. The way they draw these characters to make you feel how they're feeling, that's real.
Yep.
That's real if you feel it.
So we recommend it, but I would say like you really have to be wanting to read something that's going to make. I know some people don't like reading or watching depressing things or anything like that. They just like watching happy things. But so you really have to be like, okay, I really want. If you like books that look at life and they try to give you a different perspective and try to. I guess it's cheesy to say, but find the meaning of life. But that's what this is. So that sounds good to you, and you trust our recommendations. If you're this far into this podcast and you are, go get it. It's not that expensive either. It's what
there's like $10.
This one's $20. But
oh well,
20, but 10 issues for $20.
Yeah,
That's not bad.
It's not
that bad. And hey, if you have a library card, it's on Hoopla, so go get it on Hoopla. You can read it.
I have it in novel form and in issues.
You did get it in issues?
Yeah, about years ago in issues.
Oh, nice.
Those issue covers are great.
I saw on eBay $20 make it howl.
Yeah. Oh, really? It's not that much.
I worth it if you like this book.
So, Barillas is the Olivia Domingos is the main character.
Spoilers, by the way.
He would all spoilers. Why is that a word again?
Well, I know, but I just let everybody know.
He's the miracle child. He was born in darkness. He was born during this blackout, and he wasn't breathing. They brought him to another room, and his mom started singing, and he started crying, and all the power in the whole city came back on. So she kept calling him my miracle child.
My little miracle.
My little miracle. Yep, that's what she says. Not miracle child. And the story basically is there's 10 issues. 9 of them are him living a day in his life. And at the end of each issue, the big twist is that he dies 9 times. And let me say right now, actually, I was going to keep it to the end, but this is a good place to put this. There's a good interview with Gabriel Moon and Fabio Moon and Gabriel. I switched to the pronunciation.
Had the same problem I did.
Where they talk about this, and this is before the book came out, so they really don't talk about this is like in depth what the book's about, but they do mention. Here you go. No, sorry. Anyways, I'll find it here in a second.
Yeah.
Oh, here it is. So they talk about like what does this book mean? I mean, there's a lot of times they kind of wanted you to find your own meaning in it, but they said that any day can be the most important day of your life. Any given day, something can happen that will change your life. Any given day, you can meet someone in your life will never be the same. This is your life one day at a time. Make it count. So this book basically, like, even though at the end they find out he has brain cancer and maybe that's somehow related, I took it as, and I think we talked about it beforehand, you guys took it as too, like, it's just showing you, like, every day you could die. And he's obsessed with death because he's an obituary writer, and he sees people dying every day. He sees people dying in different ways every day. He's obsessed with it. So every day there's something that happens in his life where he tries to put himself out there, and he's like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And he decides to live his life, and that's when he dies, right? And it's kind of, I think the overall message is like what they just said, like every day you have to choose to live your life. Don't worry about if you're going to die or not. Like he did die in those situations, right? But it was out of his control. There's never a time where like he was like choosing to die. Like he was trying to live his life, and so you really have to take those chances and and not be held back by the thought of death, by the fear of death, and you have to live your life. What does his wife say? His dad's wife tells him one day why she likes him, or no, what he should do.
Do you remember mother?
Yeah, his
Aurora,
his dad's wife.
His mother tells his father something. If you guys remember, I'll look it up here.
I guess I don't remember that.
What do you? I don't remember either.
It's in the last issue here. What was the first issue? Who did he meet?
Who do you meet?
Yeah, what's the first story of the first issue?
Well, you see, so
He's 32.
He's 32, and it's his dad has a big gala going on, right?
In his honor.
In his dad's honor, and
No, his dad's honor.
Yeah.
On his birthday.
Bernadette, yeah, okay.
On Braz's birthday.
That's okay. Birthday, and there's a gala going on for the dad,
Right.
and so Brass is like, I'm not going to go.
Mm-hmm.
In the end, he does decide, I do need to go. Gets a call from his mom going, it's your dad's thing. Yes, I'm aware of that, Mom. I know that this is going on. But it's my birthday.
Well, he doesn't say that.
No, I know, but it's in his head. It's like, it's my birthday.
Like, how pissed would you be if
I'm sharing my birthday with something else.
Right.
And and my dad hasn't taken the opportunity to say happy birthday. Doesn't give a shit that I'm doing this, that I'm alive. And so he does decide to go to this gala. But before he goes into the gala, he goes into a bar. And he talks to the barkeep. And he goes, are you, I think it was Gino?
It was Geron or something. Gerons, or I don't know how you say it.
Anyway, so the barkeep goes, no, that's my father. I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name.
G-Ho, like his son.
Yeah, I'm the son. I'm his son. Why don't you change the name of the bar? Because it's my dad's bar. It will always be my dad's bar. And so, you don't choose your family. So in this instance, in the bar, the nephew shows up, has a gun, waving around, and the barkeep says, What are you doing? What are you doing? Why are you doing this? My mom, my mom never cared about me. And this is the nephew saying, my mom never cared about me. Doesn't care what I'm doing. And the nephew shoots the uncle, shoots the owner, the barkeep. Yeah. And blood is all over Brass, and he gets shot.
Yeah, he asks him first, why would you shoot your uncle? And then the guy says, you don't choose your family, and shoots him.
And I think in that moment, because he says, like you said, he goes, if I change the name, it would still be his bar, and I'd still be his son. And he's like, we're all somebody's son, right? And then that moment happens where the guy breaks in and kills his uncle. And he says, why would you kill him? He's your uncle. And he goes, you don't get to choose family. I think in that moment, Bryce is kind of reflecting, being like, yeah, you don't get to choose your family. Like, you really should be there. He should be there for his father and be at that gala, no matter how mad he is. His dad didn't say happy birthday, but it's too late. He dies.
Yep.
So it's that moment of reflection. Like, this story really is a moment of perspective for him, being like, you're right. Like, family does matter. And, but it, when he learned that lesson, it was too late and he died. So that's the first story. And Garrett, what do you think? Did I don't think we ever showed our cards telling you that he would die over and over. So he dies in that first issue. And were you like confused, or were you like, what's going on?
Well, at that point in the story, just because you see a bang doesn't always mean that someone's dead. So it really takes you to get to issue 2 to figure out what's going on. But in that first issue, I was like, it's very ambiguous. He could have been shot, 100%. And they did, but obviously they did the obituary right after, so you assume he's dead.
Well, it even opens with Brass being covered in blood.
Right.
So you're already going, what's going to happen?
But you don't know. He's still alive.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, you see bang, and then you see his little, because at the end of each issue, there's a little obit. And so then I was like, okay, well, clearly he died. But what was really great about, like, the imagery in that instance, it was not like showing me how he died. It was more, I think, with the obit, how that makes it more powerful, and why, like, Barras is like so like into like writing obituaries. It's like he can make an obituary, or this is his own, but I mean, you can make that moment for somebody finding about their loved one dying like a little more graceful and a little more impactful, so that you remember them on who they were, not like the person being killed.
Yeah.
So
it's remembering their life and what led them to death. But
so when it happened for the first time, I was like, holy crap, first issue, like, but instantly when the obit happened, I'm like, okay, I know this guy's the main character. There's no way that he's not going to be obviously in the rest of this book. But at that instant, I thought maybe his life ends at 32, because the next issue is 21, I believe. And
yeah, it goes back. That's the thing too about this book. It's not linear. It'll flash throughout his life, so you don't get to see. It's not like he does die and get older.
Right.
So you don't see that next. You don't see
Right.
32 and then 33, 34. You see 32 and 21.
Right.
And then there's part where he's a kid. So like it jumps all over the place. So the next one, yeah, you're right. He's
Which I think
23.
is good because like it makes you assume that 32 is the end of the story and there's so much more story to tell. And so I don't know until issue 3 probably that when the age goes beyond 31, I believe.
I think usually in every issue you see him either happy or upset with the choice he made.
Yeah.
And then it flashes back to like that choice. And so we see in the second chapter, he goes to Salvador and he meets this girl. And it's kind of like a one night thing where they meet each other. They decide to go to this festival for the, do you remember what it was? Water God?
It's like Eileen-ha or something.
Yeah, it's like ICH.
Right. She's the,
I
don't know what her
La Mijas Day. So you go out, you put something
She's
in
a water goddess,
you put,
by the way.
you put water in the water, a little basket in the water. You wish for something, she gives you a wish. So he goes and meets her because he goes and swims out in the ocean. And he comes up, and he's by her boat, so he gets in her boat. They talk, and he, on a whim, not even thinking about it, was like, "Hey, do you want to go to the market with us?" And they go to the market, and they talk about for a while. And there's a moment actually that, and you kind of see where Bryce's head is that he goes, "So what do you do for a job? What's your job?" And she kind of gets taken back by it. She goes, "What is that going to tell you about me?" And he goes, "Well, you should have a job, right? You have a job? You don't." She goes, "You don't have a job?" She goes, "I have a job, but like that doesn't going to tell you anything about me. Look around this market. Do you think that tells you what that guy is about? Like you see he's working in this marketplace?" And I think really in that moment you see he's so obsessed with having a label, and he wants to be a writer.
Definitions for people.
Yeah, he wants definitions for people. And she kind of teaches them, like, look at your friend. He's living in the moment, taking these pictures. It's more about what you like to do rather than what you do for work. And it's that moment for him where he realizes being like, it's kind of like his muse in a way. He's like, because they talk about muse throughout this book, a bunch of like the artist, his dad had a bunch of muses where she kind of like changes his perspective in a way, being like, you're right. It's not about me trying to find work as a writer. It's me wanting to be a writer for the love of it. Not writing because it's my job, which I mean is his job, but like that writing he doesn't like doing that. He wants to write stories. And then he's like, okay, well, she says, meet me tonight for the festival. They go and meet, and she makes a little basket, and she makes a wish, and he goes, what did you wish for? And I think she says, I can't tell you, or something like that.
Yep.
And then does he swim out?
He goes out on the boat with the fishermen.
He goes out on the boat,
fishermen take
fishermen.
all these baskets out to give to the goddess of the water. And so he's out on the boat, and they're giving out the baskets. Baskets are floating. I think most of them have either a candle or have flowers or fruit. So it's an offering for her to accept.
And that one actually is more ambiguous than the first one. You even see, he just cuts back to the water, and you see the basket that she made. The dolls float back to the beach, and it says that he drowned out there. And then,
Well, the part I thought was cool is the guy in the boat, like, is with Braz, but you see him undo the knot between him and the girl. And so I think that's kind of like he's freed out of this thing about this entanglement, but it costs him.
he kind of tells, he says, you are not one, not like this, you are two. And he takes it apart, and he puts them on the ocean. And then next thing you know, Bryce is not in the boat anymore. And it's like, he drowned. So you're right. At that moment, he was like, it's not right for you to get together with her right now. Kind of telling him, because in the next story, you see that they get together, and they're breaking up
Right.
after 7 years.
Yeah.
It didn't work out, and he's having a moment of regret, right? The whole issue is him regretting the relationship. His friend Jorge tries to bring him out to like, hey, we'll find somebody else. Don't worry about it. Like, don't try to like force it. Like, go out there, just have fun. If something happens, it happens. Nothing really has to happen tonight, he says. But I think that the next issue really is about telling yourself you can be happy again, right? He sees that girl at the market at the end, and he says, I feel happy for the first time again. He's with somebody for 7 years, and he sees that girl, and he says, he finally, we talked about in the non-spoiler review about this book not only being sad, it's also hopeful. Yeah. In that moment, he thinks like, he's like, there's no point. It's over. Like, I was together for 7 years. I can be together with somebody else ever again. He sees that girl in the market. He thinks she's cute. He's walking away from the market being like, that's going to be the woman I spend the rest of my life with. So he turns around to run back to the market. He makes that decision, being like, no, you're not going to give up. You are going to put yourself out there and then try. And he gets ran over by a delivery truck. But still, like, I think what it's trying to say over and over again, when you listen to this, you probably think, oh, that's stupid. He got killed again. But that's not what it's about. It's about, like, it doesn't matter whether or not you're going to die today. You still got to put yourself out there and do what you're going to do. Live your life.
Well, it's showing that for as much as he liked the first girl that he was with for 7 years, and he is so heartbroken, and so there's just, not that there's nothing to live for, but he's never going to love again. He sees this girl, and it's just this, I don't want to miss this opportunity. Yeah, maybe nothing happens, but I need to at least say I tried.
Yeah.
And the unfortunateness is he does get hit by a car, or he gets hit by the delivery truck. And it's no one's fault. He is so blinded by, I want to go see this girl. I don't want to miss this opportunity. He doesn't look, and he gets hit.
And I think those moments when he thinks about the breakup, like everything is reminding him of it. It's hard to read. It's like very like him regretting like everything he's done with the choices he made and like that whole fight. And he even says like, we said some bad things. The last thing I remember is her,
you're a piece of shit.
Telling him you're a piece of shit. He goes, that's the last thing I remember her saying. It's probably not the last thing she said, but that's the last thing because it sticks and it really hurts because I know it's true. And she said, and they show you, she does say more stuff before she leaves, but that was the thing that really, he was like, that's the last thing she told me. And that's going to be the last thing I remember about her is that she told me I'm a piece of shit. And it really does, I think in that moment, like we talked about perspective for like relationships, even though, I mean, they're together for 7 years, but like we talk about the beginning was about family. And then this is just about somebody who he made to decide, be like, I want you to be part of my life. That stuff still hurts. I mean, it's not going to be like your dad passing away, but it's still for him, like everything reminded him of her. He couldn't go to that apartment. He wanted to get out of the apartment. He had a 6 month lease still. And when he got out of the apartment, he got a new apartment. He couldn't be in the new apartment because it felt so lonely. He couldn't be in there. It didn't feel like home. And when he sees that girl, I think the hope is that there's a familiar thing about it because he's like, I feel like there's another shot. Like it's not all about making a mistake and regretting for the rest of your life. Sometimes, like I think you said, Alex, sometimes it is about taking a second shot. And no matter whether or not I'm going to make the basket or not, it's the attempt. And this, by the way, speaking of the art, this 2 pages when they're in the market and they're just staring at each other back and forth. There's a lot of silent panels where they're just looking at each other. He's in line, he's looking at her, and then they're like, "Hey, sir, it's I don't know what this is different currency.
Right.
It's like 4.35," and he's like, "What?" But like you can see like him moving up the line. Yeah, he's just staring at her and staring at him.
That top picture earlier in the non-spoiler review, we talked about just how much detail is in this book, but it's not overdone. Where I don't believe this is real.
That's what I mean. Look at this store. Like there's a lot of stuff where. I mean, it's not like really drawn in where you're like specifically know what this says, but there's bread, there's cans, and it does look like a store. Like
it looks like a convenience store. He came there to get something, pick up something real quick. Sees this girl, and it looks. And even the second page you're looking at here, there's things hanging up. There's things in the store. The store actually feels real. There's not just things stationary. There's other things sitting around the store, on the wall, on the ceiling.
And then in the next couple panels when he's out on the market, even though there is narration, you can see him just in his face. There's a part where he kind of looks up. You can see he's thinking. And the next couple pages, he starts to smile. And I think it's the first time he smiled in this whole issue. And then he smiles, stops, and you see him turn around, and you're like, and you know, like, oh, he's going back before he even says it. So that was that issue. I thought that issue was great. I don't know, like, in terms of connecting with it, not really for me, but still. Very powerful, I thought. The
age I am now, 28, married, have a daughter. That one is it's past my time. But I mean, if I was single, this would be one of those things that I've been heartbroken multiple times. And you go, God, I loved that girl. I liked that girl. She was so beautiful. There's no one else who's ever going to be as good. And then you find someone, and it's just some random woman you found. And you're like, I don't want to miss not talking to her.
Yeah, this is probably the issue for me that like I first started connecting on like emotional because I've been through like a really hard breakup, like a couple in the past, and like that's the kind of cool thing. Like on my perspective, like right now, it's like, you know, you do kind of feel that way. But then you're right. There's those little tiny moments where you're like out in the world and you're like, just the smallest connection ever could be, you know, could create the greatest thing you just don't know. So that's what's exciting about it is, you know, you get this rush like, hey, there are other chances. Like there's not just this one, and like you can get what you want. You can go for it. And yes, he does die, but you know, I think what these issues do is, you know, like you can start noticing the trend with this issue. I think is the things that he wants to do, like these great things that he's trying to accomplish. Like the next issue lets him do that basically, yep. And then shows what the results are. Like with the girl from El Salvador, like, you know, at first he was like, "Whoa, I get to be with this goddess," and then you see 7 years later, "Oh, I'm miserable."
Yeah.
And so on and so forth. So I think, you know, at this point, you're starting to notice trends and notice that, I mean, it really connected me on a really big level and just makes you think like, hey, you can't revolve everything around one person. You know, there's way more fish in the sea.
But also, like, he gets over that fear of making him, like, he dedicated 7 years to that one girl, and I think the fear is he's going to waste more time. They talk about also, like, she's like, thank you for wasting 7 years of my life. And he's like, you could have wasted it on your own. Like they're fighting, and they talk about wasting time. Whereas I think at the end of this, he realizes it's not wasted time. Like that made him who he is today, and he can move on and try again. And if he's with somebody else for 2 months, 1 day, 3 weeks, like it's still not wasted time. You're still developing as a person, and he
you're still
just has to make that chance. And like you said, it's not about him dying each issue. And I think you can get hung up on that, but it really is him deciding to live every issue.
Right.
Well, and I was going to say the trend of the book, and at least from issue 2 to 3 to 4, it's, yes, you see him die at the end of the issue, but what that decision was prior in the issue before actually leads on to the next book.
It's basically telling you that's coming for you anyways. So might as well live your life. It doesn't matter that it happens on the day he decided that he's over his breakup. It could have happened 3 days into a relationship. It doesn't matter. Like, you have to choose to live your life and not worry about like, hey, I'm going to die today. Because otherwise you're paralyzed by that fear. Just like he's paralyzed by making a mistake.
Yep.
The next issue is that they show you, like you said, he gets with that girl. And they're having a kid. It's actually the day that she's giving birth. Alex, how much does this one hit you? You just really see it happen.
You know, this was one that it was more hit home, but the end of this issue isn't quite as hard hitting. Eventually, this one will be probably one of the hardest issues for me.
Yeah, I know. I think we also have our fathers, but that day's gonna come. And I was reading this too. That happens a lot in this. Like his dad dies, and you kind of think about that being like, the day's coming. Like, I don't like my parents. Their fathers aren't alive still, and so like the day comes and like. But I mean, like the same thing about like not being paralyzed by your own fear. You can't be paralyzed by being worried that other people are gonna die too. Like it's gonna happen. You just have to be able to. Live your life and decide being like, I mean, it happens and you have to deal with it when it comes. But anyways, we'll go. So they're having a kid at the hospital, and his mom tries to call him like once they leave. She's like, let it go to a voicemail. We got to get to the hospital. And it's his mom saying, hey, your dad's fallen ill. We're going to the hospital. And when he's at the hospital, he needs to get a cigarette break. So he goes, hey, my cell phone's dying. I'm going to go find a phone. And she goes, don't call your mother right now. Wait for a little bit. He goes, no, I'm going to call the doctor to let him know we're here. And they must have a specialty doctor or something. I'm not sure how it works in Brazil. He goes downstairs to use the phone, and he sees his mom outside having a smoke. He's like, what the heck? He goes out there. He goes, Mom, I didn't even tell you we're having a kid yet. How do you know? And she goes, your father passed away. And he sits there, and he goes, he's like shocked by it, but he doesn't want to tell his wife. His wife's going through labor. So he says, hey, my dad's sick. He's here also. Doesn't really tell her, and so they try to. And while she's having a kid, and she's like, "Okay." So she took some medication, right? She's not having contractions anymore. But then they have the kid, and he goes to his father's funeral. And as far as funeral, he finds out he has a half sister. She comes to visit, and he's having a hard time with that also because he's like, knowing like the day his dad dies. He knew that his dad fooled around. He had all these muses. Yep. Right. They knew before he even got together with his mom that he wasn't a guy that was like attached to one lady for too long. But And I don't even think that he like cheated on her. It's just that this is from
I think
past
this was
relationship.
prior relationship.
But still, on the day of his dad's death, it's hard for him to swallow that pill and be like, yeah, he wasn't always with my mom, and now she's coming here to like, and he feels like she's trying to somehow benefit from it. Because he even asked, he goes, what's your favorite book by him? And she goes, I haven't read any of them. I'm not here as a fan. I'm here as his daughter.
But it would make sense, though, that maybe the father did step out. Because I think she's younger than he is.
Oh, really? I thought she was older, because later on in the issue, he actually has an older sister. So I thought,
is that the same sister then?
I assumed it was like,
I thought he
They're
actually
both
had
the same issue.
oh, are they okay?
Yeah,
sisters
because I think he has a sister from his mom and dad.
Oh, okay, so maybe she is younger.
And so I think Dad did step out, and that's why he's struggling so hard. Is going that
Yeah, you're right.
Dad
That makes
wasn't
more
faithful, and that offends him being a son. Going, your job was to love mom, and so now I'm pissed at you that I have this half sister when she really should just be my sister.
And then she's telling a story about Breas's mom's telling a story about her husband, how he always worked in the study. She always kept him alone because she didn't really he liked to work alone, and he was always writing all these notebooks and stuff like that. So that's what happened. And she found him in a study. That she left him alone for a while, and that's how she found him.
I think the thing that really says is when she tells you how she found him dead is that he locks the side door to his study, so she actually had to go the long way around. She goes, if I could have gotten in, things may have been different.
Yeah.
And so knowing that there's something she may have been able to do, I think is hard, is knowing that there's always a way out. There's always another option. But that's just how it went for her, is that she saw, and it sounded, his study is amazing. When you see it later in this issue, it's all of these windows. It's a lot of natural light coming in. And she gets to see this through glass. His
wife says, hey, can you go home and get Amelia? Right? And he goes home and gets his doll. That doll's from that kind of second story, isn't it? Where she put in the thing. The other girl put in the thing. I kind of got that when he's like, oh, this is not your time, and he unhooked them all and threw in there. And this is maybe not the same doll, but like in metaphorically. Yeah, it is, but he takes the doll out. You're right, he takes the music box. But the doll looks the same as the second issue.
Oh, I
didn't notice that.
I thought it was like a ballerina. Yeah.
I think maybe just metaphorically, Fabio and Gabriel are supposed to be like, see, this is who you're supposed to be with.
Yeah,
like,
and that's the thing, is that the doll from the first one is just like a actual cloth made doll, where this is a quote unquote ballerina doll.
And he gets back to the hospital, and his mom's crying outside. And he goes, Mom, and he goes, it's a boy. So he had a kid while he was gone getting this thing. And so when he gets there, his mom says, hey, that nightgown we used to have for you when you were small, can you go home again? He goes, I just left. My kid was born. I'm not going to leave again. And she goes, your dad really wanted your son to have it. Can you go get it? So he leaves to go get it. And that's when he goes, to his parents' house, goes to the study and sees everything and sees all his stuff. He sees his book on his dad's table. You can obviously see that he was about to read it, right? And then he finds the little mess where his dad's heart stopped beating. And for Breas, that's too much. And he also has a heart attack in his dad's study. And he dies in the same place, the same way that his dad did. And that's how that issue ends. But, I mean, all these things that he was afraid of, right? Having a kid, and that went okay. He's afraid of his dad's death. Like, this issue is more one of the depressing ones. But still, I mean, in a way, like, all these things happen. He didn't want to face the man that his father actually was. But it turned out, like, that's not really that big of a deal.
He was still his dad.
He becomes a dad. So he sees, in a way, like, he kind of gains perspective there for a second. And then he goes back to his dad's study, and he sees his dad has his book at his table. And in that moment, because his dad, if you find out throughout these issues, wasn't really there for him most of the time. It was in the study. They talk about how he always was in the study, never really had time for him. And when he sees his book, I think in that way, it's him being like, oh, this is my way out. This is the way I was going to connect with my father. Like, he was going to read my writing and be like, and on a writer-to-writer basis, they're going to know that they're going to finally be connected. Yeah. And I think that's when it's too much for him, and that's when he dies.
Like I said prior to us talking about this specific issue, I still have my dad that I heartfelt in the beginning his wife being pregnant, going to have a baby. I can guarantee in the next however long my dad is around, the next time I read this book, if he has passed, I will have to stop and tear.
Well, even that last issue when they're both like dead in a way. Are they dead? Yeah, they're both dead. His dad's there, and the same thing too. I think maybe also like because then that's the third stage, right? Because you have reading this and you're looking up to your father, and then you have a kid and you look down to your kid, and then when your father passes away, I think you go back to being like reflecting on how your father and how you were his son. Yep. But yeah, you're right. So, and I think that like you're right. This issue is really going to hit harder than it is right now. But the next issue actually is kind of like a flashback. Right, he's a kid. How old is he? Does it say?
I think he's 8.
11
years old.
Is he 11? Okay.
Yeah. So this issue is we were talking about his dad wasn't always there. This issue is kind of from his dad's perspective. He talks about how when they went to this family farm, right? All the kids could run around. He didn't have to worry about them. His wife worried about them, but he really didn't worry about them. He just was out there to write. So there's even moments when Breas goes up to his dad to like kind of talk to him, and he's like, "Can't you see I'm writing? Like, go away, son." And he's just trying to like talk to his dad. Because they have to go shit in the woods. He says, "He goes, Dad, how come we have to go shit in the woods?" And he goes, "Can't you see I'm writing?" He goes, "There's nothing on the page." And he talks about the reason why he had to go shit in the woods is that we have a well, and we can't be contaminating water. We need to preserve the water. He goes, that's kind of what this page is. I'm not writing stuff down because I need to make sure I'm conserving the words. And so much afterwards I can write without wasting too much water, he says. And his son goes away. And you can kind of see throughout this issue, right? His dad's not really, like, I don't think his dad really hangs out with him in this whole thing.
His like you said, his dad, this is almost a way out for dad just to be on his own. Because that tree is his dad's tree. And he sits and writes under.
And he has his first kiss, another tree. And then
his dad names the tree after Aurora, though. Like
his mother, his muse.
Eventually his wife. Yeah.
And then they go back to their houses, right? And it goes back to like, so his dad really didn't watch them when they were at the farm. And then they go back home and he's playing with that kite. And he goes out to play with the kite by himself. And the kite gets caught in some electrical wires and he dies then. He dies at the age of 11. Going out the way he came in with the light. He goes out with the light. And this issue, I think, is more to kind of set up their relationship together. I don't think there's really like a message here. It's more being like this is kind of the relationship he had with his dad. Like his dad was never around. He didn't know how to connect with his dad. Like he didn't really understand writing really that much. And he kind of just wanted to be a kid, but his dad never wanted to be a father. Or like, at least in these issues, you don't see him be a father at all.
Right.
His mom was a mom in these issues. Like they made them food, was like, hey guys, come on. Like he even says like she took care of them when we were out here. What do you guys think of this issue? This is kind of like a in-between issue. Like I said, not really like one of those where there's a message, but just like, hey, here's background.
Obviously before the last page, if you're looking for your happy story in this, the happiest part of this book, I think, is during this issue. You're finding the innocent Barras, like purest form of innocence, just being a kid, exploring the world. Like you can just see in his face, like he's in awe of everything. And unfortunately, like his dad's committed to the written word, where his like uncles and his cousins, and they're all like adventurers and trying to do new things. And he's in awe of it. And then he goes to share that experience with his dad. His dad's like, son, I'm trying to write. I'm trying to like put everything that I have into writing, which obviously it's going to pay off later, which we'll find out in the story. But I think seeing him so full of life and not having any kind of holdups, like he's just focused on having fun. And that's like what it is when you're when you're a youth. You want fun, no consequences. You just want to see the world for what it is, what you think it is, and you don't realize how deep and how heavy the world can be. And I just think that this is a great picture of innocence and just having fun and enjoying life to the fullest.
Well, I think that's the big thing for it, is that you said innocence is probably the main word for me there, is that I don't know if he even knows about the electrical wire. I mean, I don't understand. He gets stuck. His kite is stuck. I have to get it out. I don't think he realizes what the outcome would be, him touching it, him being on the ground and touching it, and that it will kill him. Right. It's just, I need to get my kite. And so it's I think for me, it's not as much of a connective story as a kid. My dad told me, and I wasn't much of a kite flyer, but I was told, don't touch the wires. You see a wire, you leave it alone. I've been shocked enough times through electricity, I ain't gonna do it. But this kid is just, he wants to have fun. He wants to be this kid, and his dad's kind of sucks it out of him.
Right.
And so it's almost rebelling against dad. I'm gonna go have fun. And out on the farm, you don't worry about the electrical wires. You're lucky you get water. In town, in the city, it's a different deal.
And I think also maybe it's the moment for his dad to reflect, because later on we do see his dad's kind of view on things are different, because he does say you got to live life every day like it is your last day. In those issues, he's kind of just like sitting there trying to write, while his son is really like living life. So maybe
he's
that's
missing it.
Yeah. So maybe that's the reason why like that issue is really to show like his dad wasn't always that kind of way. Like he was kind of, we'll see later, Bryas turns into that kind of guy who's like always like somber trying to write. And he sees his dad as that way. So that's why he tries to be that way. But later on, he'll find something from his dad where it shows him he doesn't have to be that way anymore. The next issue, there's this plane that crashes. You can see at the beginning of the issue, like not everybody's getting on. And then it cuts to Bryas is looking for Jorge. He's like, hey, when do you see Jorge? He came back from his trip. And then they figure out that plane crashed. By the way, the color in these pages, even though it's something horrible happened, it's pretty great.
This issue was actually probably one of the best story writing.
Yeah.
Just I read it, and it starts off with a trucker drinking in the bar.
Yeah.
And then it jumps to people at an airport being told you can't get on this plane, you can't get on this plane. And then it goes back to like a month earlier, 3 weeks earlier. And then you find out this plane has crashed.
Yeah. By the way, also that trucker who's drinking has been up for 2 days straight. And he's like, yeah, I'm drinking this to keep myself awake. I don't know how that works, but I guess he's trying.
Well, beer starts off as a stimulant, so he's thinking it's going to keep him awake. Eventually it becomes a depressant, makes you tired. Laid some science on you.
So all these people die in the airplane crash, and they tell him, hey, go out there and write everybody's obit. And he's writing these, and he's getting a lot of praise. And finally, his girlfriend at the time, that same girl he saw in the grocery store, it was like, everybody's loving your obits. And she's like, it's fake, though. Like, these are all for Jorge, because he never came back. And so I'm writing his obit every time I'm writing somebody else's obit. And they said, she goes, people need this. They need closure. And finally, after a month, he gets a call from Jorge. And Jorge tells him, he goes, hey, man, I was supposed to be on that plane. But they kicked us off because they took us off because there's too many people. And I decided to stay behind. And then the plane crashed. And I decided, like, that's Jorge's moment when he saw he could have died. And he's like, I can't live my life just doing that job. I have nothing in my life is extraordinary back there. Nothing in life really matters. He goes, life's too short, man. I've been wasting time. I can't go back to that life. And he decides he's going to stay. I don't know if it says where he is.
Rio de Janeiro?
Yeah, he's in Rio. And Bryas is like, no, like he decides, no, I'm going to go get him. Like he can't just stay there. And he goes on the highway to go there. Then we see he pulls up next to the trucker, or he pulls behind the trucker that we saw at the beginning, and falls asleep at the wheel, hits the truck next to him. And the last thing we see is Bryas's car is like right behind them. And they're about to crash, so he dies that way. But I think this issue really is about friendship and not giving up. Like he even talks about like if friendship is really worth it, you'll do anything for it. And even though everybody's like, dude, he's gone in a month, he's dead. He never gave up hope. And when Jorge's like, man, just leave me alone. Like I just want to live life down here. I'd live your life. I'm gonna stay down here. Don't come get me. And he's like, I'm gonna come get him. And even though he dies, like he's willing to be like, no, man, like I know you're scared right now because you almost died, but like come back. Like
your life is here.
Your life is here.
You can tell at the beginning of this issue too, there was like a huge amount of foreshadowing by looking back. Jorge, like they were giving out deals. Like people were like, hey, if you don't get on the flight, you get a better deal, you get a better discount, and obviously Jorge took the bait on that. So I think Jorge feels guilt included in that, like not only for the fact that hey, like
Survivor's
he didn't
guilt.
die, but he survived to get a deal, to get a break.
And so when
not
Breas
live.
is driving down there, he says Jorge was his best friend, and that's what friends do. They care, they find each other, they stick around when things get rough. Friends are worth every effort. Friends matter. And then before that, he says it didn't matter if he was still in Rio. It didn't matter. All that mattered was he had the information. All he mattered was he had the information Bray needed to go after him. So he's gonna. That's He just. I mean, for him, it was worth it. I mean, everybody told him, like, even his girlfriend or wife, I'm not for sure where she is right then, but she even told him, was like, "Why are you gonna go for like don't?" And he goes. We kind of see him do that again later on in another issue. That's a little different situation, but in this one, no, actually, it's the story after this. But he dies here. You know how we see sometimes that the next issue is about the story after it. Is that this one here? Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. Okay, so the next issue we see he's actually been looking for Jorge because when he got to Rio, he wasn't there, and he gets this postcard. The postcard is from, where does it say where it's from?
Sao Paulo.
Yeah, so he goes down there to find his friend, and that's when his wife tells him, "Hey, man, he gave up on you. Like, he never came back, and you went to go find him, and he's never been anywhere you've looked for him. Like, just give up on him." And he's like, "I can't. It's Jorge." And he gets that postcard. He's like, "Really, you're gonna go because he's sending you a postcard?" He goes, "He's reaching out to me, and the postcard says I can't do it without you." And he's like, "I gotta go find him." So he gets down there, and he finds this lady who was like, "Oh yeah, he used to live in the hotel." But then he ran out of money, and he wouldn't work for the hotel. He wouldn't do. Gets going back to that thing again. He didn't want to waste his life anymore, and he didn't want to work for like a boring job anymore. And so he'd rather go homeless and hungry, which he actually does, and he lives in like this hut. And she goes, "He used to live here, but he left, and all left is his postcard, so I sent it to you." And so Breas is looking for him, and he goes, he talks to her, and she goes, "I think he might be." I saw him going down to sand dunes. Go down there. He goes down there. He sees like this makeshift hut, and he finds him in there. And he's all disheveled. He's all like crazed looking and hungry. And he talks about, he's like, "Man, I tried to write you all these times." And we see all these postcards on the ground. Did you get the impression that he just never sent them, or did they come back?
I assumed he never sent them.
Yeah,
he wrote and wrote and wrote, and
And he just
never had a way to send them out. The only reason they got sent out last time she found it.
Yeah. Okay, so he never had money to send them out.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's all these postcards. And he's like, "Man, I tried to contact you to get my postcards." And you see Brace kind of look at the ground, and then they show the postcards. And he goes, "Yeah, man, I got every single one of them." And he goes, "Time to go back." And he goes, "Time. Too late for that today. The storm's coming." And he goes, "Hey, man, I read your book. It's great. I always knew you had it in you." And then he pulls out a knife and cuts his own wrists. And then he goes after Breas. And you're thinking, being like, "Man, these guys are friends. Like, why is he trying to kill him?" And you know what the strongest moment I think of this issue is? He's killing him. They're showing him they go after him and killing him, stabbing him. Like, and it cuts to moments of them being friends. And it kind of reinforces them, like, what's he doing? But then you kind of think about like that postcard. I can't do this without you. He can't die on his own. He can't be lonely when he dies. He doesn't want to be alone again when he dies. He's too scared. Like, he really wants his best friend to be there while he dies, but he really wants his friend to die with him. And so he kills his friend, then kills himself, commits suicide. This issue, going off the last one too, when you see how much Breas is friends with Jorge, and he does all this stuff for him, and then Jorge is so what'd you say, scared? Like, he really has accepted death. Like, he's really at that point where he's not living life anymore. He's done with life, but he's too afraid to do it by himself.
Yeah,
and I think it's that fear. The whole thing talks about the fear of death, and it's at that point where he's afraid to do it. And Brace has always been that friend in his life that gave him the courage to do things. And then for this one, he's like, "Man, I can't kill myself without you." Basically, that's what he told him on that postcard. "I can't do this without you." And but he didn't know he was going to do it.
I think it's almost the other way around, is that in the past, Breas is actually the one who is scared to do things. He's the one that followed Jorge doing things. Jorge was the man who was living life, and Breas followed him. Let's go to the cliffs. Let's do this. this is the time where you get to see Jorge is actually the one struggling, who needs the assistance.
I got the impression, and I don't know, maybe I just read too much into it, that, yeah, Jorge always was the guy that had more courage, but I think he also had more courage because he wasn't alone.
Yep.
Like, he was with Breas.
Who, like, fed him, and then, yeah.
He was kind of that guy
Giving
being
the confidence.
like, yeah, he was kind of the guy being like, man, I got somebody with me. We can do, like, I'll do this if I have somebody with me.
Yep.
And when he left, he finally found out that he can't be lonely. Like, he really does need somebody. And Breas was his friend that was like that person in his life that he really did need to continue living. Like, when he talks about, like, man, there's nothing back there for me. Nothing's extraordinary. I can't go back there. I need to live life. He didn't realize that he was leaving behind a crucial part of his life, his friendship with Breas. And that's why he's like searching for him by the postcards, but he could send him out. I thought this issue was really great in a different way, kind of, because it's more about friendship, this last two issues. And then when he kills him, it's kind of like, you want to feel mad, I think. And I was kind of angry.
Yeah.
But you also, like, feel pity in a way, being like, I mean, the man is, like, done with his life. And in a way, though, like, if you're really that desperate, and I guess in a way it's kind of poetic, being like, I want my friend to be here, too. Right. But it is kind of also kind of selfish to be like, I'm going to kill him, too.
That you take away his life.
So I go back and forth on it, yeah.
The one thing that I'm getting from, I was flashbacking through all the issues. This book is a lot of love in a weird way, or so much love. Like in this, Jorge loves Breas. They're friends. They're best friends. And like you said, he's afraid to die. I mean, in all honesty, everyone's afraid to die, is afraid of something. Jorge needs his friend.
Yeah.
And so whether or not you love your wife, or you love your best friend, or you love your dad, even though you hate your dad, you love your mom, or your mom loves you, love is weird. And love and hate doesn't take a lot of a big change to have either one.
Yeah.
It's how you choose to live your life. And this book is an epitome of life and love. And yes, death is around every corner. And it's how much are you willing to live your life before death gets you?
And I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there when everybody else had, like, he has his wife. He found somebody. Like, everybody has somebody in their life. And for Jorge, it was his friendship. Like, he really... I mean, you really don't see him. I mean, it's not really about him, but still, you don't really see him with anybody else throughout this whole thing. He really, like, Breas is his friend. There's even a flashback to when they're, like, kids in college. And those guys were, like, friends for a long time.
The way that I read Jorge, and it's not to sound prudish, Jorge is a ladies' man. He is out to find that next lady to bed and to add to his belt.
The only real relationship he ever had in his life is with Breas.
He never talks about family. His family and honestly, the person that he loves is Breas.
Yeah, and it's kind of, it delves into that fear of being alone, but also we've touched on it, dying alone, and thinking back on your life, like, is this the results of all my decisions? I'm sitting here in a hut, dying all by myself. And then he sees his friend, and he's like, no, I'm going to die with my friend. And that's why I agree, Marvin. It's very poetic, obviously disturbingly poetic, but in a way that, like, he's found peace because he's like, well, at least I'm not alone when I'm dying.
I think that's where I was. I was like, realistically, this is very selfish for him to do, and it makes me angry because Breas is trying to do the right thing by his friend, and he ends up paying for it in a way. Even though his wife tells him at the time, don't go, like, he gave up on you. But he really didn't give up on him. Like, the man's been trying, but he really didn't have a way to reach him. They never gave up on each other. Jorge just made a mistake, and he didn't want to have to pay for that mistake anymore. So he's like, I need you to help me. And I think you're right. When he saw him, he was like, okay, now I finally can face this. Like, even what Alex was saying, he, in that moment, got the courage from Breas, like, I can face this now. My friend's here.
And say it's a different take on your friend having to be there if you're in the hospital dying and you're in hospice and all you need is that one person, that one love you've ever had, so that you can say goodbye and you can get closure. This is Jorge's closure.
I mean, the last thing he said to him was like, I read your book, man. I knew you had it in you. Like, he's telling him congratulations. And then, like, I'm sorry. And
so it is selfish on his part, but it's I think that just shows how much Jorge actually loved Breas, that I need. It's not that I want you. It's I need you. You are my life.
And talking about Moon and the panels in between of him stabbing him, when it's like it cuts to like them talking on the beach and like it shows you moments of Breas. Yeah, Breas being or Jorge being that person for Breas, being like, hey man, like he's helping him. Like they show them like that breakup scene, show him talking through the breakup scene, being like, can you almost believe it's over? Breas says, he goes, and then Jorge says, what are you talking about? Our trip, man. Next week we'll be back home on a job interview. He goes, forget that, dude. Try to live one life at a time. See what happens next. And then it cuts to him stabbing him. And then Jorge says, pretty exciting, don't you think? And then Breas says, you got all the answers, huh? And then Jorge says, only for the good questions. Like, he's always been that guy for Breas, that's, like you said, been his rock. But it turns out, and that's, I think, what Jorge assumed. But when it got down to it, he found out, was like, no, Breas
was the rock.
Was the person he needed, yeah. Last two issues here. I'm
going to put disclaimer.
Funny.
There may be tears.
Floodgates could be opening.
This issue actually, for me, was really hard to read. So the next issue we cut to Breas has decided not to go after Jorge in this choice. You could say, you know what this is almost like? You know, if we talk about Lost in a way, you know when they did the spoilers for Lost, I guess.
Dude, I read this and I literally watched Lost videos like right afterwards because I don't know, I have something connected.
Do you know the flash sideways, which are like different? Like if they had never gone to the island, that's kind of what this is. Like if he had not done this situation and decided to make the other choice, what would have happened? And so he decides not to go after Jorge and stay with his family. And he has his kid grows up and he becomes a successful writer. And he's always on a book tour. So it's really his son and his wife living their life alone while he's on the book tour. But he writes her notes being like, I can't wait to come back. Like the only reason why I'm away for so long. So when I come back, you realize how much you love me. He writes her notes all the time. I wake up and I fall in love with you every day. Like that day at the bakery. And his son is so proud of his dad. Like he has his book. He goes, I don't understand. I didn't understand. He goes, I don't understand it, but I still have it so I can read it. And they're having a career day where she talks to Breas on the phone. She's like, you got to come for that career day. And he goes, what am I going to do? And he goes, well, just read them something. You're good at that. And he goes, okay. And these kids are like picking on him, being like, oh, where's your dad? I forgot to pick you up. Because his dad usually picked them up, but during this time, she's picking him up, his mom. And he tries to defend his dad, and he goes, and they're all like, oh, your dad's never around. Stuff like that. So I think a lot of this stuff for me at least hit hard because it's, and I think, Alex, I'm maybe not right now. Maybe you've been seeing it right now. So in this issue a lot, it comes back to Breas decides to live his dream, right? Be a writer. His job, in a way you could say, or his dream, either one. It's very hard to, when you decide like that kind of balance, right? Work life, but also like Breas is trying to be an individual, but also he's a father, right? Yeah, he's also a husband. So in this whole story, he's gone. He's not there. And you can see the effect it has on his family. I think that's what this issue is about. Like your choices when you get to this stage are not about you anymore. Nope. They're about everybody else. And he sees how his son, even though he's not there, his son's always like walking through the study, being like looking at everything. And then even for his grandpa being like, thinking about being like, looking up to his dad and being like, wow, my dad. And then when the kids pick on him and they're like, my dad lets me do this. My dad lets me do this. He goes, your dad doesn't let you. And then they tell him, your dad's never around. So how would you know like what he lets you do? And there's a scene where he's watching The Lion King. And by the way, in the scene where freaking Mufasa dies.
Of course. I know. I saw that.
And his mom goes, hey, time to go to bed. And he goes, if dad was here, he would let me watch this. And she goes, well, he's not here. And you can kind of see him be like, oh, okay. And like, in a way, he's trying to be like, see, my dad would let me do this. And she's like, well, he's not here. Like, I'm here. And I thought that moment in this book was like, you see his son try to finally like realize and put a perspective being like, yeah, my dad's not here. Like, my dad's not here. And that's kind of like, in a way, you know that song? By the way, I can't listen to this fucking song. This song, what's it called? Father and Son? Is it Father and Son? No, it's not Father and Son.
Yeah, no, it's Father and Son from Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Was it Kat Denning?
No. You're thinking about Cat Stevens.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that song. No, it's a different song. Where Silver Spoon, where he talks about
Cats in the Cradle.
Cat's Cradle. That's what it's
There
called.
you go. I was Father and Son is the Cat Stevens one.
There's two. I get those two mixed up.
Okay.
That's what happens. It's Cat's Cradle, where he talks about how his dad never had time for him, right? And when it grows up and his dad's a grandpa, or was older, and finally has time to be with his son, who he's like, well, then now he goes, I don't have time for you anymore. And then that guy doesn't have time for his son either. That happens here too. Like we see in that one issue, his father never had time for him, was always writing. And then now, and he saw, like, he must know how that feels. But then now he's older and he becomes a writer. And he treated his son the same way, even though he felt the same way. And for him, I think it also shows, like you said, he finally, that's perspective in a way, being like, oh, I see what happened now. Like it wasn't before just being mad at his dad for not being there. Now he's like, oh, I see why. Like he tried to try to be a writer and do his thing. It wasn't that, well, in a way, and I think that's where the notes come from, him being like, I really want to be home, because he realizes, was like, I really need to let them know when I'm not there that I want to be there. And his dad never did that part.
Well, the one thing that, and it's when he's in school, when Miguel is in school, the son, Brass is his hero. I mean,
yeah,
he lives and breathes for his father.
I was going to say, even though he realizes his dad's not there anymore, he never doesn't become his hero anymore.
So he never gives up hope that he still has his dad.
Yeah.
And that this man is the most important thing, I think is even more important than mom, is the fact that dad isn't home, and his heart has grown so fond for dad. All he wants is dad to be home.
Well, that's kind of the message too. Like I want that when I come back for them to miss me so much, that to show that affection, that love, and you can tell that they do. He's gone so much that they definitely do love him, and all they want, you're right, is for him to be home. And man, yeah, it's tough.
All right, here we go. This is this is the moment when, at least for me, the rest of the book for me is like losing it. So the mom is going to pick up her son. What's his son's name? Gabriel?
Miguel.
Going to pick up Miguel, and she gets a phone call from Breas, but she drops her phone in the water, loses her phone. Next day at work, she gets a phone call, and it's from the hospital. And she thinks it's Miguel. Like, hey, what happened to Miguel? Because she's so not worried about Breas, like, and not in a way that she doesn't care, a way that she's like, he's taking care of himself. I got to take him care of Miguel.
Adult.
He's an adult. And she finds out that Breas died. And you get cuts to her finding that out. And like I said before, like in this panel down here on the bottom right in this page, it doesn't tell you that he died. It just says, hello, it's just me. Something happened to my son. And then her look, and then a look of shock, but also like looking really upset. And then on the next page, it's a picture of Breas' typewriter, and then of their two chairs outside, just silently looking at them empty. And then it cuts to, so when he was gone, he wrote his son a letter being like, hey, I'll be back in a couple of days. Don't worry about it. And since his dad can't be at career day, he reads the letter at career day. It says, why do you travel so much? Asked the little man. When I'm away from home, I remember how much I miss my family. And once I finally return, they always remember how much they love me. And he goes, this is the last letter my father sent me. He was a writer. And that's when it cuts to what I was talking about earlier. It cuts to her in the car looking up at their house with this face. And you could tell, like, she's just not going to get out of that car. Like, she can't do it. And on her driver's seat is like all his last belongings he had when he was at the hospital. And then she listens to the voicemail he left on the phone, being like, I'd call every minute, just listen to your voice in that machine. He goes, hey, so I saw a couple walking on the street today with 2 kids and a little dog. It was like looking in the mirror. I'll be back in a couple of days, and we'll take a walk and be mirrors of our happiness too. And she's like really sad on the couch. She looks over, but then she sees Miguel. And I think for her, she sees Miguel and she's like, okay, at least I have a part of him still. And Miguel comes over, they give a hug, and they have a dog. Right? That was the last thing that Breas wanted to do. But, I mean, it really is that issue of, like we said before, even though he's not in this whole issue at all, is that issue of, and we'll see in the next issue with the letter that happens, that he finally learns that now his life isn't his own anymore, right? It's not about him. Like, it's going to affect his death now affects people in a greater way than it did before. Even though before he had a mom and stuff like that, but still now he has a son, he has a wife, and
there's people who are dependent on him.
Yeah, so it's a really sad issue. By the way, because of that freaking kid just look like my son. I cannot read that issue and not think of my son.
The whole issue I read, it's the whole time it's heartthrob, it's heart hurt. I mean, my heart hurts reading that issue 9 because I think that's what issue that was 9.
It is 9,
and I read it going, when for me am I going to find that breaking point? And I'm not going to try to make Garrett tear up, but I would assume for you this is a consistent thing. Your dad doesn't live at home with you.
And that's what I connect with. Like, you know, a lot of my childhood with my dad has a great career in the military, but that comes at a great sacrifice to be with you constantly. And so, yes, when your when your dad is gone, I mean, you love him so much that it's hard when he's not there. I mean, he's your rock. I mean, you talk about rock, you know, you love your mother, but your dad passes that knowledge on. And, you know, when something bad happens to me, I think I need to call dad. Like, he knows the answer. And, you know, sometimes when he's not there, that's when you miss and love him most. And, you know, it definitely, it does hit home. But, you know, that's the best part, though, is the times I get with my dad, and, like, that makes me a better person. And when I do get to, like, be on my own in the world and whatnot, at least I have those love and that feelings and those things that I can do because he did get to teach those to me. So even though he can be gone, I know he'll always come back, and that he does love me, and that he loves my brother and my whole family. But yeah, I mean, you idolize them because when they're gone, you don't realize that the time you have with them while they're here, you got to really hold on to and make the best of it. Because just kind of like this story, that return might not ever happen. So, you
know what, I was going to mention it, but you're being pretty open, so I'll mention it too. My dad, growing up, he has a job where he worked overnights, Monday through Saturday. Mm-hmm. So Sunday was the only day he would be home. So growing up, I saw my dad like once a week, and same thing, like you said, like even though my mom was there every single day, like you don't have basically it seems like you don't have a dad, right? And you see like that part where he talks to all the kids, and the kids like, my dad does this, and you really do be like, well, I wonder what my dad would do in this situation. He's not here ever, so like I never know how he would react to this. So you're right, like even when he says my dad would let me watch TV, I go, I don't know, he might, I don't know how he would react. He wasn't there for this moment. And now with a kid, that's a constant fear, is that when you want to be there as much as you can for your kid, but also like you start to realize being like when I'm working, right? And sometimes you have to work more than you're supposed to overtime or anything like that. You start thinking, being like, oh, okay, now I see. Like when my dad used to work all those hours, like I see now. Like I didn't want to be at work. I don't want to be at work. I'd rather be home. And when you have, and then also like there's certain moments when you're like, even if you want to like do something, right? To build like a different part of your relationship, like a friend, it does seem like you're being selfish in a way, right? Right. You want to go hang out with somebody, and you're like, you feel like you want to be selfish because like that's like 2 hours you're not with your kid, and it does bring you back to those moments being like, well, I can be home. And like my dad didn't have a choice; he was at work. And then I read this issue, and it was like, even though that was his dream, like he followed his dreams to be a writer, and that's, if you see, that's a constant theme throughout this book, is that that's his dream, to be a writer. He doesn't want to be an obit writer; he wants to be, a novel writer. And he finally gets that chance, and he's out there on the road, but he's constantly checking in to let them know, I do care about you. I'm just out here, making a living, but also like living my dream. And she says, his wife says, even in a moment, was like, he knows that in little moments that she's mad that he's not there, but she overall can handle it, and she knows that it's okay because he's doing what he wants to do. But like even in those moments, like doing this takes a lot of time, right? doing this for all of us. Like you're not at home right now, Alex. Like even like these moments, it feels selfish in a way, but yeah it feels
I'll not to cut you off. Last week when we did the forecast, I stood in my hallway for about 5 minutes when you asked me, do I want to do the forecast? It's like, I do, but I don't.
Yeah.
And when I left tonight to come here, it's like, I want to do this show so much, and I love doing this. But I've got this little girl at home that I, no offense, love more.
Like when we do this show, right? Well, he's a little inside baseball, but when we do this show, a lot of times the chance I get to read is on Thursdays. So like at 7 or something like that, I go, hey, I'm going to go work on the podcast, and I come up here, and son's still awake. So I just feel so much. I'll be like, hey, I got to go like do this for the show. So like reading this was really brought that perspective too. Not only the thing with my father, but also the thing now with my son being like, he wasn't there, even though he really wanted to be, and then he ended up dying and never seeing his son ever again. Even though he's like, I'm gonna come home in 2 days. So it really is. It's very hopeful at the end. They're like, because they find out they're okay. They're gonna be okay without him, but it's still very sad that he's not there anymore with them.
My dad actually was gone for 3 years up doing his work when I was in high school. And even when I was younger, he would go on trips. Now, I don't remember, obviously, the younger ones. Even when I was in high school, it wasn't, or middle school, it wasn't as big of a deal. But I've actually grown to be a man of, my dad and my mom actually were traveling this weekend. And every time I call my dad, even if he's in town, he just literally swung by and called me when he got home or something. Every time I get done talking, it's, I love you. Because you never know what dumb stuff may happen.
Yeah, like in this, he was having brain surgery for that tumor, and there was complications. Like, by the way, that's the only thing in this whole issue. This whole book, I'll say that I didn't like was that it seemed weird that he'd be on a book tour and be like, "Hey, I'm going to get surgery. By the way, I'm out here." That was a little weird. I thought
the way I understood it was that it was an emergency.
Oh, was it an emergency?
That he had a headache that wouldn't go away, or something had debilitated him. That the only way to save him would be to do surgery. And in that emergency rush, something was missed.
Oh, you're right.
It
last minute
him.
surgery. It said I missed that part.
So I was going to say,
okay,
it wasn't.
That makes more sense. I thought he was like, "Let me schedule this surgery while I'm not at home." And I was like, "All right, maybe wait till you get home."
But you can see also in that issue how much, like, again, focusing on the mother-son bond, that like he's not there, he's always around. Like everything, he's around, but at that moment, when she's thinking of Miguel at school, when she sees the phone call from Baraz and's like, clearly he didn't pick up Miguel. So she's like, Miguel. And she like drives there, gets to the school, picks him up.
And he's standing in the rain.
Phone. He's standing in the rain, just waiting. And she's like, I do love my husband. I do care about him so much. But right now, there's nothing more important to me than getting Miguel home and getting him.
If you think about it also, like, it really is a mother and son issue, but it's a mother and son issue in a way, showing you that if he's not there, it still puts a lot of burden on her to take care of the kid, even though she loves that kid a lot, and she loves her husband a lot. It's still a lot.
Right.
I want to say, for as much as we've talked about fathers, mothers, it's a universal thing.
Right.
Yeah.
That I don't want to make it seem like
parent.
dad.
It's
a parent.
I keep
thing.
saying father because I'm a father.
Well, and that's, I was gonna say, I guess for me, it's the next issue I read, and there's specific things that are mentioned, and I filled it in differently because I don't live the same life that Marvin has. I've got a daughter, and I just don't want, if there are mothers listening to our show, if there are fathers listening, it is not a mother-father thing. It is literally a parent.
Oh wait, that was issue 8. Here's issue 9. Issue 9 starts with him waking up, and he is not on a book tour. He's at home still, and he was overslept, and he kind of has this weird dream where his wife's like, "You get to dream your life away while I'm living our life." She goes, "Our life isn't as great as you thought it was," and the sinks are overflowing. She goes, "I can't take care of everything while you're in bed when I'm supposed to leave my job." And she's like saying all these things, and he's like, "What's going on?" And I think in that couple pages, that's him realizing the amount of stuff that she sacrifices and the burden that she has being a mother and being the keeper of the household. And then we cut to him being younger, right? He's the obit writer. And this is kind of him like being depressed, being an obit writer.
Not even trying. Not
even
applying
trying.
Himself.
He knew he has been running away from his dreams because he's afraid of failing. And so this is talking about him not trying to write because he's afraid that he's not going to be good at it. And then some girl comes up and is like, hey, you want to sign my book? And he's like, what book? What are you talking about? And it's another one of those things where it's kind of a dream. Like he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he hears on the TV the plane that's going to crash. And he cuts to he's on the plane with Jorge. He's like, he has the book in his lap. That's kind of like the connection between the two. And he tells him, I go, hey, man, look out the window. He goes, why are you so nervous? You afraid of flying? And he goes, no. He goes, just, you got to look out the window sometimes. Just look out there. And they'll look out there and all of a sudden they're in the canyons like they were in the issue prior. And now he starts realizing, he's like, man, I got to start waking up. He goes, what's happening here? I don't understand what's going on. And he goes, where do you think you're going? You can't just run away. You know, it's never that easy. You have a decision to make. He goes, about what? He goes, I think you know. And Jorge points up to the kite, which in a prior issue was Brace's death. And Brace is a kid again. And he sees his dad at the tree reading some stuff he's written down. He's reading it out loud. And he goes up there and he turns into his adult self while he's walking up there. And then he sees his kid self. No, he sees his son. His son with his dad. Yeah. And he's the dad's reading his grandson his writing. And here's what they say. He talks to his son. He says, he said it can only be you. And he goes, well, I guess it's a story about death. His son goes, death? And Brace goes, it's really about life, but death has a big part of it. And his son goes, I don't like death. And Brace goes, no one really does, but truth is, like it or not, everybody dies. And he goes, life is like a book, son. Every book has an end. No matter how much you like that book, you'll get to the last page and it will end. No book is complete without its end. And once you get there, only will you read the last words will you see how good the book is. It feels real. And he goes, go, I can talk to your grandpa. And he talks to his grandpa for a second here. And he goes, do I have to keep dreaming? And he goes, you have a choice. You can wake up or you can keep dreaming. And he decides to wake up and you see that he's in his bed. And the cancer finally, he's so sick. He looks pale, white hair. And you finally get the perspective, or the perspective, but the idea that he's dying. And that's what these dreams are in this last issue here, is that he's kind of like dreaming all this stuff, reflecting back on his life. And then he goes and writes his obit. And he writes his obit, and he dies. All right? Is that what happens? Yeah, he writes his obit and he dies. And then he says, this is the story of my life. Take a deep breath, open your eyes, and close the book. And we get the final issue. The final issue is called The Story of His Life. And he kind of goes through his whole life. Seeing from when he was born, we see the miracle finally happen. The blackout that cuts to 76 years later when he goes to the doctor and he's like, hey, man, this cancer is spreading. We got to do treatments once again. Bree's like, no, I'm done. He goes, I lived a good life. He goes, you still got years left. He goes, yeah, but I'm not going to go through treatment again and waste my last years being sick. He goes, I think I'm done. He goes, well, you're going to, be dizzy, have headaches, feel off balance, experience loss of memory. And he goes, man, I'm old. That stuff's going to happen anyways. And he decides to leave. He has his good part. This last issue, I would say, I don't know if you guys agree, and this might be too high a praise, but I'm going to say it. Might be some of the best writing I've ever read in my life. Some of these things that are said in here. It's like, especially about reflecting on life. It's like,
not only do I think issue 10 is the strongest of the book, I would actually agree. In all honesty, the whole book is so well written, but there is just some stuff in this last issue that it touches home, and it really does kind of open your eyes to other parts of life.
Well, there's a part here where he talks about what a home is. And I just want to read it quick. I just want to go home, he says. And he goes, it takes some time and a lot of looking around, but you eventually find out that your home is a lot more than just the house you live in. Breas has all the time in the world to figure that out. He discovered your country can be your home, or a city, or just a particular neighborhood. Sometimes your life changes, you change, and your home moves to a different place. Breas realized that home is not a physical place at all, but a group of elements like the people you live with, a feeling, a state of mind. He feels safer just knowing that even if he's away, there is a home waiting for him to return. That's where he can rest, where he finds peace. He goes back home. I don't know where they live now. It's like in the kind of country, kind of. And he's way old. His wife is way old. And he sees her and she says, "Hey, did you go see the doctor?" And he goes, "Yeah." He says, "I need treatments or I'm going to die." And he goes, "I don't think I'm going to do the treatments though." Like he doesn't even try to like sugarcoat it. He goes, "I'm done. It's over. It's over. Oh, it's over. I'm done." And she looks at him. She tears up, but she's smiling. She goes, "I love you so much. I love you too, honey. We're going to be okay." And you know, we talked about art earlier. This living room feels like lived in. Like when I see this living room, I'm like, oh yeah, that's somebody's living room. And he's out on the porch now with his son Miguel. His son Miguel's older, and he's looking out and he sees his dad, like a ghost kind of his dad, right? And this part he's talking about a cake, but I think I think realistically, right here, he's thinking about his life when Miguel's like, "Did you have enough? Are you satisfied, Dad?" And then it cuts to, he goes, "Dad, you listen to me?" He's like, "Oh, they're talking about cake." But I thought that was really like a great moment to be like, even though Miguel's talking about that, he's reflecting on like, did I live a good life or not? Because he knows at this point he's dying, right? He's been scared of that for so long. In the moment that he knows for sure the expiration date is coming, that's when he's like reflecting back, being like, "Man, you know what? He's had a good life." And Miguel says, "Hey, by the way, that book that was on Grandpa's," because Miguel's going to be moving into their grandparents' house. That book if your book that was on his desk, there was a letter in there for you. So he gives it to him. He hugs him, says, "I love you, son," and he goes, "I'm so proud of you." And here's the letter. Oh, buddy, here we go.
Yeah, I didn't even have to read the letter. I started tearing up as soon as that letter got brought up.
I know, man. When it was like, man, his dad died and he wrote him a letter and he never saw it until he's 76 years old. He meant it for when he had his kid. And so when did he have his kid? Like 30 something, right?
Yeah.
33?
Yeah.
So like 40 some years later, 43 years later, he finally reads the letter his dad meant for that. But at this moment also, like, I think it's a great moment for Breas to get this letter because it's not only about his son being born, it's also about accepting that you're going to die. He says, "Dear son, you're holding this letter now because it's the most important day of your life. You're about to have your first child. That means the life you've built with such effort, that you've conquered, that you've earned, has finally reached the point where it no longer belongs to you. This baby is the new master of your life. He is the sole reason for your existence. You're surrendered your life to him, give your heart and soul because you want him to be strong, to be brave enough to make all decisions without you. So when he finally grows older, he won't need you. That's because you know one day you won't be there anymore for him anymore. Only when you accept that one day you'll die can you let go and make the best out of life. And that's the big secret. That's the miracle." And it cuts to, he's sitting in the bed with his wife, writes her a letter, and then he walks onto the beach, puts 3 candles in the beach, and then he continues reading the letter, or the letter continues here, and make the best out of life. And that's the big secret. That's the miracle. Your life is out of your hands now, just like mine has been since the day you were born. I'm writing this letter to congratulate you, buddy, and admit that you don't need me anymore. So he wrote that letter for his son, Breas. His dad wrote that for Breas when his son was born, was like, "This is finally the moment where I say you don't need me anymore. This is the moment when I can die now and not feel like," and he dies all these years, and especially that issue 8, he died and he left behind his son when his son was younger, and now he's at a point where he's like, "Yeah, I can die now. My son doesn't need me anymore. He's strong enough that he can live on his own." And his dad was at that point, which he wrote that letter the day that he died. He didn't mean to, but he did.
Yeah.
And Breas read that letter the day that he died. So in a way, that letter helped 2 people not fear death anymore and decide you're all going to be okay. And I think we all agreed. I read that letter, and that part when it was like, "Oh, you want to know?" I'll tell you specifically where I cried. And because you know one day you won't be there anymore for him, only you'll accept that one day you'll die and you can let go and make the best out of your life. So that part where he's like, when he talks about being like, once you realize that you want to make your son, daughter, whoever it is in your life, you want to make them strong enough to carry on without you. That's when you don't fear death anymore, because you realize everything will be okay when you're gone. And even for like, in terms of like a son or daughter, for me at least, for a son, I was like, you know what? I read that and I was like, it's true, because everything you teach, I'm trying to teach them now, is to go on to the next stage. And eventually there's a point when you're like, you're okay to go on your own. And for a while, they're also, when they're on their own, I would say about your age, Kieran, right? It's kind of still like you're still there for them. But then there's a certain point when I guess the son becomes, and it wouldn't even say father, but at this point it's becoming a father to themselves, where they gain that perspective, be like, oh, I get it now. And then his father can be like, okay, now you're okay now. And what do you think about that? I know we all said we liked it.
My part that actually started the not the heartbreak, but the tears for me was just the first part, being told that with my daughter being born, my life is no longer mine. That her life is my top priority. And that was, as I'm sitting on my couch tonight reading, I look at my wife and I look at my daughter and I just go, holy shit. By the way, I am not a very good tearer-upper and talking, so eventually the guys may take over for me. It was that anything I do is not for me.
Yeah.
It's for her.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to that one issue, 8, when he's not there, right? When you think, like what we were just talking about, being selfish, but he tries to live his dreams in this life, but he also has to remember that he has somebody there that is, what do you call it? Depending on them, right? So, I mean, this book is like a roller coaster of like happy, hopeful, and then
so layered.
So, what do you call it? Reflective. And I think, especially that last issue, like I said, one of the best issues I probably read in my life. This whole book, at least at any point in your life when you're like, you could read, like Garrett could read it and be like, I got something out of this. We read it, got something out of this. And like Alex was talking about earlier, when we're old enough that we don't have fathers anymore, even mothers, we could read this and be like, I got something else out of this. And I think it might be hyperbole, but I think that's reflective of any great art, that multiple people can read and be like, I got something different out of that.
Different interpretations.
It's a great book. I mean, it is very
heavy. Yeah.
For us to pick, but I mean, I think
that's the point of this book club, though. It's to read things that aren't the normal things we talk about on a weekly basis. I think a part of me is that I know that reading this book again years from now is going to affect me way different than it does now. And I think that's why I like doing this book club. I'm glad that we do. Here's 3 months or 4 months to get yourself either mentally prepared for something you may have never read before. Like the next book that I know we talk about, I've never read.
Yeah.
This is a book I have read, and I actually felt guilty about it when I told you guys this is what I want to do.
By the way, when we talk about the next book, the type of book it is not reflective of this book being so heavy. It was just that I wanted to do that book next.
No, and I mean, it's one of those things that even...
no, I just want to know that... I just want people to know that it's
they're not all going to be sad.
Well, that. But also, I didn't want people to be like, oh, he made it happier because this book was sad. No, it was just one that I thought about before I even got a chance to reread this.
Yeah. Well, like Umbrella Academy, it's books that it invites you to read something different than you normally would read.
Yeah.
And that's what this book was for me. And tonight on my drive over to the studio, I was thinking, you know what, I'm so thankful that I wanted to read this book. Right. And I think
it was a good choice.
It's a good reflective for no matter what life you're from, because this book has the child, has the old man, has the young adult, has the friendship, has the I want to find a girlfriend and I found this girl. And there's so many layers to this book. Every issue invites a different feeling from you, and that I feel so satisfied reading this book. And you're right, Marvin, there are some of the best writing best
That last
dialogue,
issue,
and best
I didn't do it
prose.
justice at all. You kind of have to read and reflect on it and read at your own pace. Also, I want to say that I am glad you picked this book because I don't think this is a book I see on my shelf and be like, yeah, I would read that today.
Right.
This is a book
Like
where
I told you, I had it for 5 years. I didn't read it.
That's a book where you really have to like be like, okay, I have to read. I'm going to read this because we're all going to read and reflect on it or talk about it. And I knew it was going to be hard. We've been joking about it for the last 3 months on this podcast, getting ready to cry. Still cried. Like I knew it was coming, but you cannot read those words and cannot read this whole book, seeing those different perspectives, relationship, fathers, sons, mothers, see all this stuff and not be like, and it's not like these, I mean, this whole thing takes place in Brazil. It's not even like it's taking place in something. I relate with it based on a human level, not based on like, oh, this is me. No, it's not really me. I mean, the guy kind of looks like me, but
Geography has nothing to do with it. It's human life. It's human beings.
I think that's a great part of it because there are some things when you see like the currency and things that they say or the festival where you kind of like, oh yeah, I forgot this is a different country. But other than that, all the themes and art, like that's not just how people are. That's how all it is about human interaction and how people can get through life and not worry about death and decide to live the best life that they can live because I mean, that's what you have to do is every day you can't be like, you know what, I could die. Literally every morning you could drive your car, leave your driveway and die. Right?
You could fall down your stairs.
You could fall down your stairs. You literally could go to sleep and never wake up. Right? But you can't be so afraid of that you don't take a chance and go out with that girl. You can't take a chance and decide to have a kid. You can't be so afraid of it that you don't take a chance and reach for your dreams. Even though I think that's the thing about this too. It's not even about like, I don't think that issue 8 is about not following your dreams because you have a kid. It's being understanding that you have to have some sort of balance and that even though he died when he was out there, he still cared for his family and they understood that. And I think that's what that smile is at the end when they hug each other and they get the dog. Like he wanted the dog for them because he was like, hey, I kind of want to make our family more complete. I saw 2 kids, 2 parents and a dog. Like that's going to be us one day. And he was like, there are some sacrifices that you make as a parent, you make as any kind of relationship in order to benefit that relationship. And it's not like his dad was never there for him. So in a way, he saw that and decided to fix it. He had the same sacrifice as his father, but he decided that he would be more involved and make the choice that when he was home, he was with them. And he was trying to make sure that he built those relationships. And so, and I think when we talked about before about perspectives, this book is probably the best example. I could be like, you know, you read something and you're like, that's what comic books should be. Any art should be is for you to read and be like, oh, I understand something now. We talked about it with The Other Side. When I read that, I was like, oh, I understand something now. Like I understand it's not just us going out to Vietnam and fighting the Vietnam soldiers. It was Vietnam soldiers trying to protect their homeland. Like I never thought about it that way until I read that book. And then now we're reading this. And it's also about perspective being like, oh, okay. Now, like I told you, now I understand that these same fears you have as a parent aren't just for me. They're universal. And the only way you get over them, the only way you live your life is deciding, you know what, I'm just do the best I can. I'm going to live life the best, like try to do the best I can, live life the best I can. You can't always be worried about what could go wrong today. You have to worry about what can I do better today.
And I think, you know, what we try to accomplish with this book club is we're interpreting an art form. We don't want to like, I mean, anybody could review. We could review All-Star Superman. We could do all the like Dark Knight Returns. We could review all those books. But that's not what this book club is about. This book club is about taking a piece of art, interpreting it, like finding the points of view in it, and exposing that. And like, not all the time are me, Marvin, and Alex always going to agree on what we think about a book. But what's beautiful about these books and these things that we try to read something outside the norm is they can do exactly that. That going in, you might expect something, and when you leave, you got something else that could change your life. There's a message in so many pieces of art, and especially this book here. I mean, I don't think Garrett prior to Daytripper is going to ever be able to compete with Garrett post Daytripper. So I think that, you know, what was that, 250 pages? If 250 pages has potential to change your life,
243, really good.
Yeah, 243. I mean, think about a power of a comic book, an issue. Like, that's art, and that's why we appreciate it, and that's why we want to expose it, and, you know.
Hey, I mean, it goes back to what you said. Like, we literally had this discussion before we started the book club show. We could pick books that are plot heavy, or like pick a book that is like, you know, but we have the chance to talk about 10 issues. We're going to talk about 10 issues that, I mean, on our show, if you listen to our show is a lot of those kind of like superhero kind of comic book, and also we have Royal City and stuff like that. But I think with this, especially with like the other side, that was a pick that I never expected. And then with this, this one was understood, but also like we talked about at the beginning of the show, it's different now. Like, it's different when I read this book now than when I read the first time or read the second time. Even my first pick was something I was like, I don't even know what this could be about. I was like, why don't we try this? And my next pick is kind of like that too. Like, I kind of know what to expect from it, but I hope with that book, and I think what we give it this book is going to be something more than it's kind of like this discussion here. We can delve into it, and it's more just about, it's less about, hey, what's a pot of these 10 issues? It's more about, you know, talking about these things that we talk about briefly week to week about perspective, about art, about this medium of comic books. And great pick, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, you can see the power of it. Like, you know, even sometimes like thinking back to Umbrella Academy, if I'm ever like in a bad mood, I plump the Black Parade album up on my iPod. And I only got exposed to that because of learning about, you know, Gerard Way and Umbrella Academy and everything. I mean, every piece of each book we've done so far has given me something. And I think me appreciating that art form is me repaying the favor.
That first one, Umbrella Academy, blew me away just on thinking about how creative that was. Yeah. Like, those ideas, I'm like, who the fuck thinks about this stuff?
Right.
And that's why even like when I listen to that music now too, before I was just like, oh, this is just a pop song. But then now when you listen to it, I'm like, you listen to the lyrics and I go, oh no, this is a story he's telling.
Oh, there's so many lyrics.
And like, I know that Gerard Way is a storyteller now. And the other side, like I said, Vietnam soldiers, I never thought about it from their perspective. And it teaches you to, when in any situation, at least this is what I got out of it. The other side teaches you, like, when you're in a situation, not only think about your own situation, be like, how's this affecting the other person? Like, what's really come out of this? And this one, I think, really teaches you to be like, you can't always be worried about failing or dying. Well, dying's a way of failing. You can't be always afraid of failing. Sometimes you have to take a chance and hope just for the best. So good book so far. We'll talk about the next book here in a second. Should we play his voicemail? He had a voicemail. No. Voicemail from a reader that watched. Yeah, maybe they watched it. I don't know. They may put it on their screen, but watched. Once again, watched. Read Daytripper. I'm sick. Don't keep.
I know I've been coughing the whole show. Sorry, guys. Season change.
You know, it might help that if I take this off on mute, but I think this is like the third time I've done that in the show.
No, Grandma, Marvin never answers the phone. It always goes to his secretary. Oh, hey, Wednesday Comics. This is Sergeant America coming at you. Boom! I just wanted to tell you guys I did read my book report for the, what is it you guys call it? The guys that like to read on Wednesday, they get these too long of nature books. I got to tell you, this was another tough one for me. First off, you know, I do love Fabio Moon's art. But while reading this one, Daytripper, Gabriel Baugh, Fabio Moon's Daytripper, it was an excellent pick. I understand where you guys are coming from. But seriously, it was like homework. The idea of the cycle of life is what I originally thought it was going to be. You know, they talk about, you know, the special miracle child born in darkness, you know, the power outage, and then grows up and then gets to be, a man and then dies in the end. And then of course I see over and over again, same character, same thing going on, trying to figure this out, but it's just so sad. I mean, you have to be in a real mental state to read this book. And it was tough. I so often, was just struggling to get into that mental place to read the book and be ready for it. The ending, of course, was excellent. I'm sure you guys will talk about it on the show. Getting to the point where, you know, it explains that this man has, I presume, brain cancer, if I remember correctly. And so he is misremembering his life and so the same characters keep getting repeated and changed. It was, I don't know, very almost Lost episode-like. It was smart. All the artwork in it was beautiful. It was very good, but boy, I mean, what are you guys going to do? I mean, Dead Puppy books next time? Seriously, I would love to have us dig into a superhero book, something a little lighter, something that's not going to be a punch in the nuts, but I understand why you guys do it. It was a deep pick, excellent pick, good book. Woo. I'm Sergeant America. I'm signing off. Catchphrase.
I think we kind of really talked about that, what he mentioned. But, I mean, I think it might have to do with, and I'm going to have to consult my my titler over here. It might have to do with that little title. People are expecting League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, like some sort of like superhero thing.
League of Extraordinary Gentlemen.
Let's call it Wednesday Comics Book of Sorrows.
Hell no.
No, but I think it, I mean,
How about his nut punch?
I think Sarge said he didn't enjoy it because it was so depressing, but he didn't know how powerful it was, and he said the last issue was. I mean, I don't think you can read the last issue and I think it's great. He said it was great, but I think it really is. I do know. Like I was talking about earlier in the show, being like, I think you really have to be in a certain mindset, being like, knowing that this book is going to be depressing in a way.
Well, I got to ask, Garrett, did it help you knowing that this book would be heartfelt and that it may be tough to read? Or if we hadn't told you Marvin's cried at this book, that it is an emotional book. If we just were like, hey, we're going to read Daytripper, enjoy it. Would you have enjoyed this book more being thrown into the deep end, not knowing what was going to come?
I think no, because I think the hesitations that I have going into it, just like I've explained it like literally half hour ago on the show. When there's something like super, maybe it's been longer than that, whatever. But when there's something super heavy emotionally that I'm going into, I've had some tragedies in my life, and it's bad to do this, but I kind of lock those things in a box, and like I don't like to go back to those places. So knowing that I'm going to read a book that could take me there, I'm always hesitant. But it's kind of like before you're going into a test or anything like that, you just take a deep breath and say, "Hey, like you're just going to do it." So I read the book, and I think knowing going in, I was keeping the book at arm's length, and before I knew it, my arm was down to my side and I was just entranced by the story. And I think like going in with a hesitation, just being worried that it was going to be too over the top, I think it actually softened me to like emotionally connect to all the characters and be like, hey, this is real. You feel this, you're going to feel this. This is actual real in your mind. So no, I think if I would have gone into it blindly, I think I would have enjoyed it less, to be honest.
Yeah, I think, I don't think Sarge is wrong in saying that he didn't like it because he didn't want to read something depressing. I mean, that's only your opinion. And I think anybody else that's likes something that was like, oh, I don't like reading comics to like feel sad. Well, then you're not gonna like this book. Because there's no way you read this thing and not get sad at any point. Because what we talked about before, there's something for everybody to reflect on their life. And I think it's reflective in a way not to be like, oh yeah, that's funny, I relate with that. It's in a reflective way being like we talked about having perspective, like I said before, because it's about going through bad things, but finding the good in every day and living your life every day and not just being held down by those things.
I'm a firm believer in reading comic books that I want to feel things. Yes, there are superhero books that I read just to watch Batman or Spider-Man beat the piss out of somebody.
Well, together? Both
of course.
Fight each other?
Team ups. But when we read Animosity, at least Garrett and I read issue 2, Sandor gets beaten. And I remember texting at least Marvin and Garrett too, I hated this issue because I was so pissed at what happened. And that's an issue that stays with me because I was so pissed at what I read. And those are the books that I actually enjoy the most. Are the ones that make me feel, or that I can relate to. I've obviously never been beaten unconscious, but I love animals so much that pissed me off. I live a life. I have a wife. I have had a girlfriend who turned into my wife. I have a daughter. these things are real for me. These things aren't just a book. This is going, hey, reflect on your own life. And that means a lot to me. So
you can bridge that gap.
Yeah. So this book is, I think, big for me is that I wanted you to read it, Garrett, for the first time, being like, okay, it's hard to read sometimes, but it is so fruitful to read it. There's so many things you're going to take from it. And for Marvin and I to read it again, this was an eye opener. And you're right. The Alex that read this 3 years ago, I feel as a different man. I look at my wife and I look at my daughter with just, I am so blessed with my life that I teared up again on the show.
250 pages literally changed your life.
Yeah, twice. So it's this book is not to oversell it for anybody. This really is an amazing book that go into it knowing that it may pull on some heartstrings, but at the end of the book, you're going to be just like, This is life.
I think when I finish that book, I don't think I've been in a better mood in months than when I finished that book today. I read it, and I've never been in higher spirits, like about something so heartfelt. I felt lighter than air. Like, it felt great. I still feel that way. I feel like I have a new perspective on the world just from reading that book.
So that's Daytripper Fabio Moon, Gabriel Ba. Vertigo, it's $20, or you can rent it on Hoopla and read that here. So the next book we'll be doing in the show, so the next quarter ends in July, first week of July, right? Am I fucking up like last time?
No, you're right.
Know.
Okay. So
wait.
So 4 months or 3 months? 3 months.
3 months.
You're right.
Next
quarter,
July.
7 is July.
So the next book, the first Wednesday in July, you get your voicemails in 605 to
1849.
605. What is it? 219.
That's on the board. 1849. Did you not write it on there?
It's on. Oh, I have it right here. Oh no, I closed it. Anyways, whatever. I'll look it up here in a second. It's in the show notes. Look in the show notes down below. It's right there. But get your voicemails in WednesdayComics605@gmail.com. Send us your email. And 605-215-1849. Yeah, that's right. And tweet at us, Facebook at us, your comments, questions, anything you want to talk about. The next book, Punching Babies. No, it's not Punching Babies. Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1 by Alan Moore.
I mean, Wednesday Comics, Leave Extraordinary Gentle People proudly presents
Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1 by Alan Moore. We're talking about the first book. It is, I guess, technically more superhero-y, but it is really a reflection. And if you go back to our discussion with John Boylan about that winter special, a lot of times Swamp Thing in this one, you'll see when it comes up, is more about what it means to be human. And I think we're kind of getting a little, our books are more, like I said, they're also going to be about something like this. So this is what this is going to be about. That show, speaking of John Boylan, he should be on that show. We didn't invite him on it. He did accept. So John will be here. So you won't only get three dweebs talking about it. You get an expert in Swamp Thing.
Return of the King of the Green.
That will know what he's talking about Swamp Thing, and we'll bring our little jip and jab, a little jig, and we'll talk about that book. But let us know what you think about it. Go ahead and get. It's a book that's everywhere. It's out in. You can buy it. Garrett was looking to buy this issue. I went to the library. I saw it at the library. It's on Hoopla. Read this Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1. You know what? You read it. Then go to rootsofswampthing.com and make sure you read more about the green. If you want more information, background information, go there. Like I said before, email WednesdayComics605@gmail.com. Let us know what you think. Are you going to try out Daytripper? What's going on here? Too depressing for you? You looking for a little perspective of your life? Let us know. At Wednesday Comics is our Twitter. You can let us know there. At Alex Pastrello is his Twitter. At Karat2188, at Marvin_Sogwirl, and at Pastrami News. You see that again?
He probably got kidnapped.
Facebook.com/Wednesday Comics Podcast. Find our Facebook page, like our Facebook page there, and invite your friends to like the Facebook page. YouTube, search for Wednesday Comics. You can see the Gauntlet late last week. I
put a reminder out this next.
I downloaded it on my phone. But I got to edit still, and that shouldn't take that long. I should probably do it tonight while this is edited. So Gauntlet's gonna be on there. Catching up gear if that ever comes out again. And
I've been caught up.
In
By the
this
way,
show,
I gotta ask, how many issues behind are you, Garrett? Marvin, I know 100,000.
What's up?
You want to know this every week?
I am at least 50 issues behind.
45 total.
Okay.
So look for a couple of issues of Catching Up with Garrett. You think maybe I should just start cleaning and throw all these away?
All these books?
Yeah.
I don't think you could organize yourself to throw them in the trash.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like I said before, 605-215-1849. Leave us a voicemail. Let us know. Actually, we get the whole month booked up, so these shows coming out are going to be hot. You're going to want to listen to them. Send us a voicemail. Let us know what you're thinking about the month of April. That's the, comes in like a lamb, leaves like a lion.
That's weird because that's March, but okay.
All right, I'm a month behind.
Doesn't the lion eat the lion?
Is it March?
It's March.
What about the 14th of
April showers bring May flowers. So far, all that I heard is April brings snow flowers.
Hey, it's the 15th.
Calendar man doesn't even know the saying.
Is the 15th of April? Is that the Ides of March?
Nope, still wrong. That's tax time.
Like I said at our book club, Saga of the Swamp Thing, Book 1. Get that book, Alan Moore. Siouxpercon 2018, Return of the Con September 28th, 29th, and 30th. We'll be there on 28th doing a live show. We'll be doing that jig I'm talking about. I will actually jig. You want to see me jig? Come to the show.
Absolutely not.
I'm good.
You'll see us 3 buffoons, maybe some other guests. We'll see. It's going to be a big show. You're going to make sure you're going to be there, but also other things going on. Buy the weekend pass. It's only $30. That's $30 goes to a good cause. All charity donations. It's a nonprofit. We go sell to literacy. We're going to let people know that reading is cool, and that's what that's about.
Sorry.
We're reaching out to everybody.
Reading is cool.
Like I said before, roots of the Swamp Thing.com. Go there, learn about the Swamp Thing, and you guys have any questions? DC World Swampy on Twitter or Roots of the Swamp Thing on Facebook. Throw them a question there if you have this. If you read the Saga of the Swamp Thing, you have a question. Throw them a question. He'll answer it. Make sure to subscribe to the show. That's on iTunes, Stitcher Radio, Google Play, and Spotify. Now you can follow us on Spotify. Let your friends know they can subscribe too. You know what? Go to your friend's house and subscribe for him. He doesn't know how to do it. You got to do it for him. I don't know what you said. Oh, yes. Hey, by the way, go to our Instagram, and Wednesday Comics Podcast is our username, and follow us because we're putting out more pictures. Speaking of my wife before, she's in charge of it. She's putting out some pictures, and it's been going pretty good. We have some listeners that are like, hey, what do you have this Instagram for? Not using it. Yeah, we're using it now. So, maybe, you know what? Let me take a picture of Alex right now. You can see. I should have taken a picture when you were crying. Then we could put that in Instagram.
Here, I'll spit at you. It'll look like tears.
It was a very serious show. Usually we're, like I said, doing that jig. But today we were more serious. We'll turn in next week. We might be doing the jig. And, by the way, here we had this whole...
I got to say, if anybody comes in September and they actually expects us to do jigs, I'm blaming you.
You don't know how to jig?
Do you know how to jig?
I know how to get jiggy with it. Okay.
Two different things.
Big Willie style.
Oh, Jesus.
Solid.
Almighty.
Guys, I think we need to record that whole show over again. I didn't push play. Record.
I literally end you.
I can guarantee you, I would retire from the show and
inside
find
your
someone
chest
else.
cavity.
You know what?
Blood
I don't
hard.
fear death. I fear not pushing record. That's what happens every week. So for this week,
Do you fear a knee to the balls?
This week I've been Marvin.
I am Alex.
And I'm Garrett, and you better hear me say this, else Marvin got a knee to the balls.
Hey, everyone. Keep turning those pages.